It was one of those nights where the clock felt stuck. The kind where every second drags like it's being pulled through mud. I was halfway through a lukewarm cup of coffee, staring at the blinking cursor on my monitor when the call came in. Line 3. Private line. No caller ID. That alone wasn't unusual. Plenty of rural landlines around here didn't show information. But the timestamp made me frown. 2:13 a.m. That's the dead zone of the shift. Too late for drunks. Too early for commuters. The time where nothing happens unless something's wrong. I took a breath, straightened up in my chair, and patched through. County dispatch. What's your emergency? Silence. I waited. Sometimes the line would lag, or the person on the other end was fumbling to speak. But the quiet wasn't total. There was sound. It was soft, slow, like a faint rise and fall. Breathing. Not frantic. Not gasping. Just steady. I leaned closer to my headset, instinctively lowering my own voice even though there was no reason to. Hello. Nothing. Just that breathing. In. Out. The sound was close to the mic. Too close. There's a difference between background noise and someone's mouth being a few inches from the receiver. This was the latter. I could almost hear the faint wet click at the end of each exhale. I pressed the record flag on my system. Standard procedure. My training told me to keep the caller engaged. My gut told me they were already engaged, just in their own way. Sir? Ma'am? Can you hear me? A soft shuffle came through the line. Something moving. The breathing didn't change speed. Are you safe? I asked. No response. The sound shifted slightly, like the phone or whatever device had been tilted. I caught a faint noise beneath the breathing now. It was distant, muffled, almost like fabric brushing against something. I jotted down notes on my pad. Unresponsive caller. Breathing audible. Possible movement. Normally, I'd ping the phone company to try and get a location. But for private lines, it wasn't instant. I sent the request anyway. My eyes flicked to the status bar, tracing. I went back to the headset. This is the county dispatch. If you can't speak, tap the phone twice. Once for yes, twice for no. Can you do that for me? Nothing. Then, a long, dragging sound. So faint I thought at first it was static. It had a rhythm, though. A weight being pulled across a surface. The breathing stayed the same. Slow. Steady. Sir, are you hurt? Nothing. I stare at the waveform on my screen, each breath peaking like a slow heartbeat. When you've done this job long enough, you learn the difference between someone scared into silence and someone simply present. This didn't feel like panic. It felt like watching. The trace finally pinged back. I checked the coordinates. My stomach dropped. It didn't give me a street. It gave me a radius. A 3-mile-wide circle in the middle of nowhere. Farmland. Storage barns. Empty fields. No name. No address. The system logged the source as unlisted rural exchange. Caller, I need you to know we can send help, but I have to know where you are. Can you say your street name? Anything. Silence. The shuffle came again, closer now, like the mic had picked it up better. It wasn't footsteps. Too irregular. It was almost like someone dragging their palm across a wall. Okay, I'm staying on a line with you, I said. You're not in trouble. I just need you to tell me what's going on. The breathing got louder. Not faster, just nearer. And then, I heard it. A faint pop. A tiny click in the background. Like a door latch. I froze. I checked the system clock. 2:16 a.m. 3 minutes on the call. Somewhere in my training manual, I knew this was the point where you escalate. But for reasons I can't explain, my voice dropped almost to a whisper. Where are you right now? For the first time, the breathing hitched just once. Like they'd heard me and were considering whether to respond. Then nothing. 5 long seconds. The kind of silence that feels heavy. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Then the breathing came back, softer now, like the phone had been lowered. But the shuffle was clearer, a kind of dragging sound, paired with small, irregular thuds. It reminded me of the sound a bag of laundry makes when you pull it over uneven flooring. Only heavier. I flagged the audio for live monitoring by the supervisor's desk. That meant someone else was now hearing exactly what I was hearing. My chat box pinged. Do you think they're in danger? I typed back. Not sure. Just breathing movement. The reply came. Keep them talking. Talking, right? If only they would talk. Can you tell me your name? I asked. A shift in the sound, like the phone was being slowly turned. For a split second, I thought I heard something under the breath, maybe a word. But it was too quiet. Just a low rumble of air moving in and out. The dragging stopped, and for a single, awful moment, so did the breathing. Dead air. I thought they'd hung up. I looked at the call timer, still live. And then, slowly, the breathing started again. But it was different now. It was closer, not just to the mic. It sounded like it was inside my headset. Like if I moved my head too far forward, I'd bump into them. I actually pulled the headset slightly away from my ear. The shuffle returned. Louder. Uneven. I sent another trace request. The system spat back the same useless rural radius. This was when I realized something that made my skin crawl. The background noise had changed. At first, it had been empty, no hum, no room tone. But now, faintly, there was something. It was low, resonant, like the hollow sound of an empty hallway. I could picture it without meaning to. The phone resting on a floor somewhere, a person crouched over it, their breath moving in slow, deliberate rhythm. I glanced up at the security glass toward my supervisor's booth. He was already watching me, brow furrowed. "You still there?" I said quietly. A single sound came through the line that wasn't breathing. A click, sharp, metallic, not like a door this time. Smaller. It sounded closer to a microphone being tapped. And then, so soft I almost missed it, a whisper. I couldn't make out words, just the texture of it. Like the voice was scraping the edges of its own volume. I straightened in my chair. "Can you say that again?" Nothing. The breathing deepened, slower now, like someone sinking into calm. I didn't realize I'd been gripping my pen so tightly until it snapped. The line hissed faintly. Not static, just air moving. And then, another noise. Distant this time. Muffled. I had to hold my breath to hear it. It was rhythmic. Faint. Footsteps. Not near the phone. Far away. Like from another room. I didn't like the way the breathing stayed unchanged. As if the person holding the phone wasn't the one moving. Or maybe they weren't the only one there. "Is there someone with you?" I asked. The breathing stopped for half a second. Then it started again. Steady. The footsteps faded. I was about to repeat the question when the sound of the phone itself shifted, like it was being lifted, carried. The breathing grew softer, as though the mic was moving away from their face. And then, just as I thought maybe they were finally going to speak, the line went dead. No click of hanging up. Just gone. I stared at the screen. Call ended in red letters. The supervisor was at my desk in seconds. "You get location?" he asked. I shook my head. "Rural trace. No address." He frowned. "Anything said?" I hesitated. "No. Just breathing. Movement. Like dragging. And footsteps. Not theirs, I don't think." We saved the recording, flagged it for review, logged the time and duration. Officially, it went down as unresponsive/unknown location. But that's not how it felt. It didn't feel unresponsive. It felt intentional. Like whoever it was wanted me to hear them breathing. The rest of that night didn't feel real. I sat there, staring at the blank call screen, listening to the low hum of the fluorescent light above me. My headset felt heavier than it had an hour ago, like it was still carrying the weight of that breathing. We logged the report. I wrote the notes exactly the way I was supposed to. Caller unresponsive. Audible respiration. Faint movement sounds. No verbal contact. Rural unlisted source. That's all the official record would ever say. But in my head, it was more than that. It wasn't just breathing. It was the kind of breathing that felt aware. I told myself it was just another strange call in a job full of strange calls. I'd had open lines before, prank calls but dials, scared kids who didn't know what to say. But there was something about the way that voice had stayed silent that made my skin crawl. When the shift ended, I drove home without turning the radio on. No music, no chatter. Just the sound of my own tires on the wet road. Every few seconds, I'd find myself breathing slower than usual. Not on purpose, like I was unconsciously matching something. Then I'd notice, and it would send this tiny jolt of panic through me, and I'd force myself to change pace. I didn't realize until later that I'd been breathing exactly the way they had on the line. Steady, measured, almost patient. The next night started quiet. Quiet is good in this job, but there's a difference between calm, quiet, and something's coming quiet. I couldn't stop glancing at the clock. 12:48, 1:02, 1:39. I knew if it happened again, it would be in the same window. That's how a lot of repeat calls go. At 2:11 a.m., my phone line lit up. No caller ID. Private. Same as before. My hands hesitated for a fraction of a second before I answered. County Dispatch. What's your breathing? Exactly the same. The same tempo. The same distance from a mic. I swallowed, pressing the record flag immediately. Caller. Are you able to speak tonight? Nothing. Just an out and out. I kept my eyes on the waveform on my monitor. It was almost perfect, each inhale and exhale forming a mirrored pattern. I sent a silent message to the supervisor, same as last night. Live monitor, please. He replied instantly, tracing. The sound shifted slightly. A soft scrape in the background. Not quite the dragging from last night. More like something brushing against the phone. I want you to know I'm not here to hurt you, I said quietly. You can tell me if you're in trouble. My own breathing had slowed without me realizing. I looked at the clock, 2:12. Theirs was matching mine now, not the other way around. I tried speeding up my breaths, subtle, controlled. 2 seconds in, 1 out. Theirs changed. Matched it. I stopped breathing altogether for a second. On the line, nothing. Then, after the same pause I'd left, an inhale. Perfectly in sync. I felt my scalp tighten. Okay, I said, trying to sound steady. That's interesting. The supervisor's chat box pinged. Unregistered number. No match in database. That didn't make sense. Landlines, cell phones, even burner phones had some trace. An exchange code, a provider, something. An unregistered result usually meant it wasn't a standard telecom signal. Which meant what? I tried again. Can you tap the phone if you can hear me? Nothing. Knock on something near you. Silence. I waited, pen hovering over my notepad. Then the breathing changed again, not in speed, but in tone. You wouldn't think breathing had tone, but it does. When someone turns their head slightly or shifts their mouth, it changes the sound. This felt like they were leaning in, closer to me. I can hear you breathing, I said softly. For the first time, there was movement on the line, a faint tick like fingernails against plastic. Then 2 more, evenly spaced, not random, like counting. I didn't like that. The background shifted again. I could swear I heard something far away, a muffled creak, maybe wood. Where are you calling from? I asked. The breathing got quieter. I thought maybe they were pulling the phone away again, like last night. But then, in my headset, I heard another sound that made my chest go tight. It was faint, so faint I almost thought I'd imagined it. It was my breathing, not just matched, replayed, like an echo, but an echo that was too clean, too close. I'd recognize the hitch I have when I breathe in through my mouth. Years of mild asthma. I pulled the headset slightly away and exhaled sharply. 1 second later, I heard it back. Exactly the same. Supervisor, I typed quickly. Do you hear that? He replied, hearing only one breathing source. Yours. I stared at the screen. What do you mean mine? Theirs. The other breathing cut in over me. Louder now. Almost forceful. It was mine, and it wasn't. I wanted to rip the headset off, but my training drilled into me. Stay on the line. Always stay on the line. The echoing breaths continued. Everyone perfectly matched to mine, down to the pauses when I tried to hold back. I tried a trick I'd used with panic callers before. I took 3 short breaths, then 1 long exhale. The line mirrored it. Perfectly. Who are you? I asked. The breathing stopped. Silence. And then a whisper. It was so low I couldn't make out words. Just the texture of it, like my own voice, played through a cheap recorder. Every hair on my arm stood up. The trace result came back on my screen. Source location, unknown network. Signal irregular. I'd never seen that before. Caller, I said slowly. If you're in danger, I can send help. But you need to. The whisper came again, louder this time. I still couldn't make it out. It was warped, like it was underwater, but there was something in the cadence that felt familiar. And then I realized it was using my pacing, my exact speech rhythm. It wasn't repeating my words. It was speaking like me. That's when I noticed something else. I could hear my own voice faintly in the background. Not just the whisper. My voice. Lines I'd said earlier tonight. Like it had recorded me and was playing it back, jumbled. Supervisor. I typed, pull recording, check for feedback loop. He replied, line isn't feeding back. No loop detected. I muted my mic for half a second and sat perfectly still. On the line, silence. I unmuted, exhaled. In my ear, the same exhale. I forced a laugh, just to see. The line laughed back. Exactly the same. It didn't sound human when it came through my headset. My own laugh, stripped of warmth, just the mechanics of it. I couldn't take my eyes off the timer. We were 7 minutes in now. That's a long time for a silent call. The supervisor's final message came. And if unsafe. Unsafe. I'd never been told that before. I pressed my lips together, trying to keep my breathing shallow. I didn't want to give it anything else to copy. The silence dragged. Then, so soft I almost missed it, the whisper formed into something. Not a sentence. Not a question. Just 2 words. I couldn't mistake them. They were mine. Hello there. The way I'd answer the call. My stomach turned cold. I ended the call without saying a word. The screen flash call ended. The room felt twice as quiet as before. I took the headset off and set on the desk like it might bite me if I wasn't careful. We saved the audio. Logged it. Same as before. Unresponsive, rural source, no ID. But I knew what I'd heard. It wasn't just someone breathing. It was someone being me. The thing about working night shift is you get used to patterns, even strange ones. By the 3rd night, I'd almost convinced myself that if it happened again, I'd be ready for it. I'd know how to handle it, control it. But that's not how this works. The first 2 calls had left me with this echo in my head. Not just the sound of breathing, but the feeling of someone being on the other end who knew me in a way they shouldn't. That night, I came in earlier than usual. Checked the headset. Checked the monitor. Made sure my trace macros were ready to go. Every 30 seconds, I glanced at the clock. 1:47, 2:02, 2:09. When the line lit up, I didn't even flinch. No caller ID. Private. Same as before. I put the headset on, hit record, and answered. County Dispatch. What's your breathing? No lag. No hesitation. Just there. Same slow rise and fall. Same closeness to the mic. I leaned forward. You've called here before. The breathing didn't change. I kept my eyes on the waveform, ready to start the trace. You know I can help you. But you have to say something. A shuffle. Soft. Irregular. I'd started to recognize it now, like fabric against wood. I tried matching my breathing to theirs again, just to see. In, out, in, out. They matched me. Why are you doing this? I asked. The shuffle stopped. The breathing stopped. It wasn't like before, where they'd pause for a second. This was nothing. No movement. No air. I pulled the headset slightly away to check if the call had dropped. The timer was still running. Hello. I said quietly. Silence. Not the kind of silence where someone's deciding whether to answer. This was heavy. Like the air itself was holding its breath. I glanced toward the supervisor's booth. He was already watching me. I typed into the chat. They stopped. He sent back. Background noise? I listened hard. Nothing. Not even the faint hum I'd heard last time. It was the most complete absence of sound I'd ever heard through a headset. Then something else. Not breathing. Not movement. Whispering. Faint. So faint I had to press the headset tight against my ear to catch it. It wasn't words at first, just the texture of a voice too low to understand. It was coming in short bursts, like whoever was kept leaning toward the mic and pulling away again. Can you repeat that? I asked. The whispering stopped. I waited, pen hovering. Then I heard it. One word. My name. Not dispatcher. Not sir. My actual name. It was so quiet I almost doubted it. But it was there, drawn out, like they were testing the shape of it in their mouth. I froze. I'd never given them my name. My mind ran through possibilities. Caller ID leak? Data breach? Maybe someone I knew playing a sick joke. But it didn't feel like that. They whispered it again, this time with more certainty. They weren't asking if it was my name. They were saying it to me. I swallowed hard. How do you know my name? No answer. Just that soft, low rasp again. And then, beneath it, a sound I couldn't place at first. It was slow, wet, like someone dragging their tongue along their teeth. I tried to steady my voice. Who are you? The whisper didn't stop. It just folded into itself, my name, over and over like a chant. Sometimes drawn out, sometimes quick. My pulse was pounding so hard I could feel in my jaw. I typed to the supervisor. They're saying my name. He replied, unregistered number. Same as before. I muted my mic for a second and sat perfectly still. The whispering didn't change, which meant they weren't responding to me speaking. They were speaking because they wanted to. I unmuted. Where are you? The whisper stopped. Then, for the first time, there was movement again, but not the shuffle I'd heard before. It was lighter, faster, almost like footsteps. 2, then 3, then silence again. You need to stop this, I said, my voice shaking now. The breathing came back suddenly, loud enough that I flinched. It was harsh now, ragged. It didn't match mine this time. It was ahead of me. I realized I was starting to breathe faster just from hearing it, like it was pulling me into its rhythm. I tried to break it, held my breath. They didn't. The whisper came back, and this time it wasn't just my name. It was my name, followed by something else. I couldn't understand the second word. It was slurred, almost wet, but the way they said it made my stomach clench, like it was meant to be intimate, personal. I didn't want to know what it was. The trace pinged back, useless again. Same unlisted rural zone. Why are you calling me? Silence. Tell me what you want. The whisper grew sharper. I could hear more breath between the words now, like they were speaking right against the mic. Then, without warning, it cut off. No breathing. No whisper. Just dead air. The timer kept running. I stared at the monitor, waiting for something. Anything. And then, one single sound. A click. Not a button. Not a hang-up. It sounded like the mic being covered and uncovered. I whispered into the headset, not even sure why I was whispering back. I can still hear you. There was a pause. Then my name again. Drawn out. Softer this time. Almost gentle. Like they were right next to me. I felt the back of my neck prickle, and before I could stop myself, I turned to look at the empty room behind me. No one there. When I looked back at the screen, call ended. I sat there for a long time, just listening to the silence in the room. The official report would be short. Caller repeated dispatcher's name. No location obtained. Call terminated by unknown party. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was that someone out there knew who I was, and they wanted me to know they knew. The screen said the call had ended. Bright red letters. Call ended. I sat there, waiting for my headset to go quiet, for that faint hiss of the open line to fade into nothing. It didn't. The breathing was still there. Slow. Steady. I leaned forward, double-checking the monitor. The line was dead. No timer running. No audio feed. And yet in my ear, the same measured inhale and exhale. For a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined it, that it was in my head after hearing it so many nights in a row. I pulled the headset off. The sound didn't stop. It wasn't as loud without the headset pressed against my ear, but it was still there, faint, like it was in the air around me. Not the room. Me. I set the headset on the desk. Sat back. Tried to slow my own breathing just to see. It followed. Perfectly. I told myself there had to be a technical explanation. A bleed from another call. Some kind of signal ghost. But the shift was quiet. No other active lines. I reached out and nudged the headset further away from me on the desk. The breathing stayed the same. It didn't fade. Didn't change. I stood up. Walked a few steps toward the coffee station. Inhale. Exhale. It was still with me. The room felt smaller than it had 5 minutes ago. I came back to the desk, picking the headset up carefully like it might be hot. I checked the jack connection, unplugged it from the console entirely. No change. The breathing didn't stop. At this point, my pulse was hammering, and I was hyper-aware of every sound in the dispatch center. The hum of the vending machine, the click of the wall clock's second hand. But under all of it, that soft, patient rhythm kept threading through. I glanced toward the supervisor's booth. He was bent over his own screen, probably reviewing the audio we'd just flagged. I didn't call him over. I didn't want to hear the words, "I don't hear anything." I pressed the headset back to my ear, even though it wasn't plugged in anymore. The breathing was louder now. And then, faint, almost inaudible, the whisper returned. My name, drawn out. Careful. I turned in my chair, scanning the room again. The shadows in the corners seemed heavier than they should be, and I caught myself listening for something beyond the headset. Some scrape of a shoe, the shift of weight on the floorboards. But there was nothing. Just my name, floating in that thin thread of air between breaths. I set the headset down again, this time with more force than I meant to. The plastic clacked against the desk. The breathing didn't falter. I pushed my chair back, suddenly aware of how far my station was from the exit. The walk felt longer than it had any right to be. Halfway there, I realized something that stopped me cold. The breathing wasn't matching mine anymore. It was ahead of me again, like it knew what I was going to do next. I turned slowly back to the desk. The headset was still there, unplugged, coiled cord limp against the metal surface. But the breathing was closer now. I could feel it. Not on my skin exactly, but in that strange way you can feel when someone's behind you, watching. I took one step forward. The inhale that followed was so close, I almost felt it against my ear. Stop, I said before I could think. For the first time, the breathing stopped. I stood there, frozen, staring at that piece of plastic on my desk like it might move on its own. And then, so faint I almost didn't catch it, came the sound of something tapping. 3 taps, even, deliberate, like fingers on the desk. Not my desk, somewhere just beside my head. I forced myself to pick up the headset again, holding it just off my ear. Silence. I lowered it to the desk. Inhale. I dropped it like it had burned me. The sound didn't care where the headset was anymore. It was just there. I backed toward the supervisor's booth. My voice felt tight when I said, "Do you hear anything?" He gave me a strange look. Right now? No. What am I supposed to be hearing? I didn't answer. Because how do you explain that something followed you off a dead call? That it had learned your breathing? Your name? Your timing? I went back to my desk because I didn't know what else to do. The headset was exactly where I'd left it, but the breathing was waiting for me. As soon as I sat down, it slid back into rhythm with mine. Not perfectly, not like before. It was warmer now, closer, like it had been practicing. I didn't put the headset back on for the rest of the shift. I couldn't, but the thing is, even without it, I could still hear it. And when I finally drove home, the car was quiet. Too quiet. That's when I realized I wasn't alone in the silence. Somewhere, just under the hum of the engine, the breathing was still there. And it hasn't stopped since that. I've worked as a dispatcher for almost 4 years now. I've heard the worst things a human can hear through a phone line. Screaming, pleading, gunshots. That strange, empty silence that follows when you realize you were too late. But this one never left me. It was around 2 in the morning when the call came in. The floor was quiet. Night shifts usually are. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the only other sound was the low chatter from the radio scanner. I was drinking cold coffee from a paper cup, trying to stay awake. The phone lit up. Line 3. Unknown number. I answered the way I always do. 911. What's your emergency? At first, there was just breathing. Slow. Deep. Like someone trying not to cry. Hello. I asked again, leaning closer to my headset mic. More breathing. Then a voice, low, trembling. I'm under a house. That's not how most calls start. I frowned. You're under a house? Yes. In the crawl space. His voice cracked like it hurt to speak. What's your name, sir? I kept my tone calm, professional. He hesitated. You have to help me. Please. I will. But I need you to tell me your name. David, he said, finally. His words were shaky, and his breath hitched between syllables. I'm stuck. I can't move. Okay, David. Can you tell me your address? Where's the house you're under? There was a pause. I could hear faint scraping in the background, like something brushing against wood. Then he said it. The address. I typed it into the system, sending it through to dispatch. But the map didn't light up. No match. I asked him to repeat it. He did. Slower this time. Same street. Same house number. Still nothing. David, I'm not finding that address in our system. Are you sure? Please. He cut me off, his voice suddenly urgent. Don't talk so loud. That stopped me. What do you mean? They'll hear you. Who will? The scraping sound was louder now, rhythmic, like a slow crawl across wooden boards. "They're up there," he whispered. "Above me." I sat back in my chair, trying to process. "You mean inside the house?" No, his whisper turned harsh, panicked. "On the floor. They're crawling." The line went dead quiet except for that sound. It was slow, deliberate. One movement, pause, then another. I pictured something dragging itself inch by inch. "David, is someone else in the house?" "I don't know." His breathing sped up. "I was sleeping and I woke up here." That didn't make sense. "You woke up in the crawl space?" "Yes." His voice cracked again. "I don't remember how. It's so dark. I can't turn around. I think my legs are stuck." "All right, just stay calm. We'll send help to your location. Do you have anything nearby you can use to make noise? To get someone's attention?" No, I can't. If I do, they'll hear me." The crawling sound grew louder for a few seconds, then stopped. I could hear the faint thud of movement above him, like someone shifting their weight. "They stopped," David whispered. "Okay, maybe it's just they're listening." My throat felt dry. "David, can you see them?" "No, but I think they're laying on the floor, right above my head, waiting." Every instinct told me this wasn't normal. Not just the situation, but the way he spoke. He wasn't panicking the way most people would. It was almost like he knew something about this person that I didn't. I typed into the system again, checking for any nearby streets or addresses that sounded like the one he'd given. Nothing matched. The location didn't exist. "David," I said carefully, "I'm having trouble finding your address. Is there any landmark nearby? Anything you saw before you ended up there?" A long pause. Then, in the faintest whisper, "There wasn't anything." "What do you mean?" "I wasn't anywhere." Before I could press him, the crawling started again. Slower this time. Closer. I could hear the boards creaking with each movement. David's breath quickened. "They're right above me now." I adjusted my headset, turning up the gain. I could hear it too. Soft, uneven breaths, but not from David. From whoever, or whatever, was above him. Then, 3 slow knocks, right above his head. I froze, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. David whimpered. "They know I'm talking to you." "David, you need to stay calm." "No, you don't understand. They don't want me to leave." The crawling shifted again, moving away, then circling back. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until my chest started to ache. "Okay," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Help is on the way. I'm keeping you on the line until they get there. Just keep talking to me." "I can't," he whispered. "They don't like it when I talk." His words sent a chill up my spine. This wasn't the frantic tone of someone afraid of a burglar. This was something else. The scratching started. Not the sound of nails, but something heavier dragging along the wood above him. Then, so faint I almost missed it, a voice. It wasn't David's. It said his name, long and drawn out, like someone testing the sound of it. I felt my skin prickle. "David, did you hear that?" He didn't answer. "David, they know your name, too." I didn't remember telling him my name, but maybe I had at the start of the call. I couldn't think straight anymore. The system still showed no location. It was like he was calling from somewhere that didn't exist. The crawling grew fainter. Then silence. "David?" I asked. "I think they left," he whispered. Relief washed over me, but only for a second. Because right after that, I heard the breathing. Not in the background this time. In my headset. Slow, deep, and not coming from David's side of the line. He heard it too. "They're in here with me now." The call cut out. The line went dead. I sat there, staring at the phone, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I tried calling back. No answer. I checked the logs. The call didn't show up in the system. It was like it never happened. When you work in dispatch long enough, you develop a second set of ears. One that listens to what's being said, and one that listens to what isn't. With him, there was a lot in the isn't. I had his voice still coming through my headset, this strained whisper punctuated by shallow, wheezing breaths. He kept repeating it. "She's right above me. She's right above me." I pulled my chair closer to the monitor, my fingers moving fast over the keyboard. The system was already pulling up the address he gave. Except it didn't. I frowned, leaned in closer. There was an entry, but it was faintly grayed out. Historical record. I clicked. It loaded a property detail, except the last update was from 6 years ago. Structure demolished. That wasn't possible. Sir, I said into the mic, trying to keep my voice steady. I need you to confirm the address. You said 114. Ashford Lane. A shaky, yes, 114. Ashford Lane. Please, please. You're absolutely sure? That's where you are right now. I'm looking at the beams, the pipes, the dirt. He whispered, like each word was costing him. I can't move too much or she'll hear me. She's crawling slower now, like she's listening. His breathing quickened and I could hear faint, dragging noise in the background. Something rhythmic, like knees and palms moving across wood. I muted my mic for half a second and pulled up the secondary map feed, the county property database, the one that's updated almost daily. I typed the address again. Nothing. The street still existed, but 114 was listed as vacant land. No structure, no crawl space, no nothing. And I felt this cold crawl start from the back of my neck. I unmuted. Sir, are you able to see any light? Any vents? Anything that might help us find your location? I can see cracks between the boards. I think that's moonlight, he whispered. Then he stopped breathing for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was so small I almost didn't catch it. She stopped. The dragging sound in the background cut off abruptly. Silence. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until my own chest hurt. I tapped the side of my headset, almost as if I could adjust the distance between me and that silence. Sir, I said softly, I need you to describe her. Anything you can. No, if I say it, she'll know I see her, he breathed. Just, please get me out. I waved at Mark, the guy 2 seats down, and mouthed, run this address again. He gave me a confused look, but started typing. The caller's breathing had changed. It wasn't the shallow panic from earlier. It was slower, more deliberate, almost like he was trying to match something else's pace. Then, in the background, creak. Not from him. From above. He let out this tiny whimper and whispered, she's right above me. I couldn't stop the mental image, some dark figure crouched, her head tilted, listening. The weight of her making the wood bend just enough to complain. Mark leaned over, his voice low. That lot's empty, man. Has been since they tore the house down in 2018. I stared at him. Then who the hell? Is he hearing? The caller whispered again. She's moving. I heard it too, slow shifts, like knees sliding across old planks. The sound grew faint, then stopped. I had to keep him talking. Keep him anchored. Sir, how did you get there? Can you tell me how you ended up under this house? I was walking. It was late. I don't know this neighborhood. I just saw the light. There was a door, really small. I thought it was some kind of shortcut. His voice cracked. Then I was on my stomach. Couldn't stand up. It's all dirt and wood and nails. And I heard her. My gut twisted. This wasn't adding up. Mark whispered again. We've got a car in the area. 2 minutes out. But there's nothing to find. Just an overgrown lot with some old foundation stones. I told him, have them check it anyway. The caller's voice came through, urgent now. She's not moving anymore. What do you mean? She's breathing. I swallowed. You can hear her breathing? Not just hearing. I feel it. Through the boards. Every breath into me. I wanted to tell him to calm down, but that would have been insulting. I could hear it too, faint, low, drawn out. Not in my headset directly, but almost like it was seeping into the line from somewhere else. I checked the signal readout. The call was clean. No distortion, no feedback. Just there. Sir, I said, officers are arriving now. They'll be looking for any opening that leads to where you are. If you see a flashlight beam, shout as loud as you can. Silence from him. Then, so faint I had to strain to hear, it's not a house. I froze. What? He repeated a little louder. It's not a house. It's smaller. The boards, they're not floors. They're walls. I'm in. I don't know. I don't. He started breathing fast again. She's moving. Creak. Creak. Closer this time. Sir, stay still, I said, my own voice tighter than I meant. Do not move. Help is coming. She's bending down. And then his voice shifted. It went from terrified to almost flat. Almost like he was repeating something he'd heard. She's right above me. It didn't sound like him anymore. Mark gave me a look, his eyebrows drawn together. That's not the same voice, is it? No, I said quietly. The background noise swelled, with groaning, dirt shifting, then cut out completely. Sir? Sir, can you hear me? Nothing. I glanced at the live call clock. He was still connected. No drop. No dead air. I could hear the line breathing, but it wasn't him. It was heavier now, deliberate, filling the space between us like something leaning in too close. I almost pulled the headset away. Mark's radio crackled. The officers were on site. Dispatch. We're at the location. No structure. Just a lot with some old stone. No access points. Over. I stared at my monitor. Copy, I said, but my voice was dry. The caller's voice came back. Only, it wasn't frantic anymore. It was calm. They're not going to find me. I didn't want to ask why, but I did. Why not? Because I'm not here, he said, and the line went dead. Except it didn't. The call timer was still running. I took a slow breath and pressed the headset tighter against my ear. And from the other side, that same calm voice whispered my name. I hadn't given him my name that I thought I'd gotten used to hearing fear. When you work this job long enough, you hear it in all its forms. The sharp panic of a car crash. The low, broken sobs after someone finds a body. Even the silence. Those awful seconds where someone's deciding whether to keep talking or hang up. But his fear, it was something else. It was almost quiet, controlled, like he'd been trying to keep it locked inside for too long, and now it was leaking out through the cracks. He'd called earlier that night, said he was stuck in a crawl space, said there was someone above him, moving slowly, dragging themselves along the wood. When I traced the address, I found nothing. No current listing, no recent sale. The house he swore he was under had been torn down 5 years ago. Still, the call had stayed connected. He didn't hang up, and now, hours later, he was still there, still whispering into the line, like we were sharing some terrible secret. I could hear him breathing when I put my headset back on. He didn't say my name, just, "She's still here." "Who?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. And then, soft, like a kid asking for help. "She's right above me." I leaned forward at my console. My screens glowed pale blue, casting my hands in cold light. It was just me and him. No other dispatcher on my side of the floor. The others had gone for coffee, or were on breaks, or maybe I didn't even notice them leave. I swallowed. What's she doing? Silence. Then, she's waiting for me to sleep. I started to say something, but that's when I heard it. Not from the phone, from the room. A faint, dragging scrape. The sound of something blunt dragging over wood. Slow. Measured. For a second, I thought maybe it was in my headset, but I glanced up, and one of the other lines on my board was glowing. The sound wasn't just in his channel. It was feeding through multiple lines like it was here. "Is that her?" I whispered. His breath caught. "She's scratching now. She does it when she's closer." The sound grew sharper. Claw and grain. Not frantic, deliberate. Like she wanted him to know she was right there, without giving him the satisfaction of seeing her. He whimpered, and I swear it felt like I could feel his breath through the headset. I turned, looking over the room. It was empty. Too empty. No chatter from other dispatchers. No ringing phones in the background. Just that scraping. "Listen to me," I said. "Stay awake. Don't close your eyes." He exhaled hard, like he was fighting the urge to cry. She's above my head now. Her hands, she's dragging them slow. I can hear her nails catching in the gaps. The scratching shifted, lower, then higher, then right over where his voice came from. It was close enough now that the wood groaned under her weight. I muted my mic for a second and checked the system again. The location data still pointed to a patch of dirt on the edge of town, the spot where the house had stood. Nothing else for miles. I unmuted. "Are there any openings in the crawl space? Any way out?" He gave a strained laugh. I've looked until my eyes burned. But it's like the space keeps changing. Corners where there weren't corners before. Beams where there shouldn't be beams. The scratching stopped. He froze. I froze. Then, one heavy, deliberate tap. He inhaled sharply. "She's listening now." I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. "How do you know?" Another tap. Louder. And this time, the sound carried into my left ear, and then my right, like she was moving between them. He whispered, because she's doing it in threes. She's telling me I've got 3 left. 3 what? But he didn't answer. Instead, the scratching returned, violent now. Faster, like claws tearing at the barrier between them. The sound ripped through the line, so loud, I had to pull my headset slightly away. But when I did, I still heard it. Raw, immediate, in the air around me. Is she breaking through? I asked. His breathing turned into gasps. She's almost here. A thud shook the line, followed by the phone clattering against wood. I could hear him scrambling, bumping into beams, cursing under his breath. The scratching became pounding. Something slamming down again and again, splintering the space above him. And then, a noise I'll never forget. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It was a low, wet dragging breath, like air pulling through something damp and broken. He screamed, pure, panic terror, and the sound cut out. The line didn't go dead. It didn't even beep. There was just breathing. Not his. Slow, steady, and far too close to the mic. I sat frozen, the sound filling my ears, my chest tight. And then, for the first time since the call began, the voice changed. It wasn't him anymore. A woman's whisper slipped through, right against my ear. Now it's your turn to look up. 15 years. That's what the screen said. When I pulled up the call log to add notes, I thought the system was glitching again. We'd had those before, timestamps that reset to 1970, random lines of code showing up in the comments field. I figured it was just another bug. But then I saw the rest. The name, the date, the status. The call I'd just taken, the one with the man whispering about the scratching above him, was logged on April 12, 2010. And the caller, according to the archived record, was marked missing/presumed dead. I just stared at it. My headset was still hanging loose around my neck, its cord coiled like something alive. I kept reading and rereading the details, my brain trying to twist it into something that made sense. Maybe the call was a prank. Maybe someone spoofed the number. But that's the thing, there was no number. It was marked origin unknown. The only reason I even found the archive log was because I typed the address he'd given me, that place that didn't exist anymore, into the notes field. And the system, instead of showing no matches, pulled up a single, dusty file. Like it had been buried deep under everything else for years, and the moment I touched the right word, it came back. I clicked the file. There it was, a recording. The play button sat in the middle of the screen, small and unassuming, like any other audio clip. Above it, the words, April 12, 2010, final inbound call from redacted. Missing. Case closed 2012. I didn't know if I was allowed to listen. I didn't care. The first few seconds were just static. Then a voice. His voice. The exact same one I'd heard less than an hour ago. Is someone there? I froze. It wasn't similar. It wasn't just close. It was identical. Same pitch. Same way the words trembled at the edges. Even the faint wheeze in the inhale. I'd noticed it during the live call. Then, she's right above me. My stomach turned cold. This wasn't déjà vu. This was word for word. I remembered him saying it earlier tonight, and now I was hearing it again, exactly the same, 15 years earlier. In the background of the recording, faint and buried in static, was that same slow, deliberate scratching. Not frantic like an animal. Not random. It had rhythm. Scratch. Pause. Scratch, scratch. Pause. The man on the tape whispered, "She's getting closer." Then something happened that didn't happen on tonight's call. The line erupted with a sharp bang, like with splintering, and a short scream cut off mid-breath. The rest was silence. No disconnect tone. No click. Just silence for another full 30 seconds before the audio ended. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. It felt like if I made a sound, whatever was in that recording might hear me too. Finally, I minimized the audio and pulled up the case file. The notes were brief. Almost too brief. Caller placed 911 from, address redacted. Claimed someone was crawling above him. Officers dispatched. Unit arrived to find structure in advanced decay. Roof partially collapsed. No one inside. Search conducted in surrounding area. Negative. No footprints. No signs of forced entry. Weather, clear. No wind. File closed after 2 years. Presumed deceased. I leaned back in my chair, my hand gripping the headset like I wasn't sure if I should put it back on or throw it across the room. Because here's what scared me most. Not the call, not the recording, not the fact that the voices were identical. It was the fact that the file had no number attached. Just like tonight. And the location? That demolition site? The official report said the house was in advanced decay even back then. Like it had already been abandoned for decades. So how did both calls come through, 15 years apart, from a place that wasn't really there? I was about to close it all down, to just push it away. Pretend I never saw it. That's what a sane person would do. But before I could, the playback bar for the recording moved on its own. It dragged itself back to 0, and then it started playing again. No mouse click, no input from me. This time, the voice didn't start with, "Is someone there?" It said, "You're in the wrong chair." I slammed the stop button, but the sound kept going. In my headset, the one I'd left lying on the desk, the same voice whispered, "You're sitting where I died." I could feel it now, the weight of the air in the room, shifting, pressing heavier on my shoulders. My first thought was that someone was behind me. I turned so fast the chair spun, but the room was empty. Still, I swear the smell had changed. It was damp, old wood and rot, like the inside of a place that had been locked up for years. I yanked the headset out of the jack, but the sound didn't stop. His breathing kept spilling from the earpiece, slow and uneven, like he was trying not to be heard. I didn't want to touch it, but I couldn't leave it there either. When I finally picked it up, the faint hiss of his breath seemed to crawl from the plastic into my palm. I dropped it, and the breathing kept going. Not from the headset anymore, from somewhere else in the room. Somewhere above me. I don't know how long I sat there before I managed to shut down the system. I didn't log the call, didn't save anything, but the damage was already done. Because the next shift, when I powered on my station, the first thing that appeared on my screen was the call log from April 12th, 2010. The play button was already glowing. And in the comments field, under the old officer's notes, was a new line that wasn't there before. "She knows your voice now.it was a little after 1 a.m. when the call came in. The night had been slow, a couple of noise complaints, a drunk driver stop, nothing that kept my pulse up. I remember leaning back in my chair, staring at the hum of the monitors, thinking about how empty the city felt at this hour. Then the line lit up. 911, what's your emergency?" At first, I thought no one was there. It was just silence. But after a few seconds, I heard breathing. Not rushed, not panicked. Just slow, steady. "Hello." I tried again. The voice that came back was low, like he was speaking right against the phone. "She's here." I sat forward. "Sir, I'm going to need you to tell me what's going on." "Who's there?" There was a pause. I could hear the faint creak of a floorboard on his end. "There's a woman. She's standing in the corner of my room. She's been watching me for I don't know how long." I started typing, logging details automatically. "Okay, can you give me your address?" He rattled it off without hesitation. His tone was calm, but there was something underneath it, something I didn't like. Not fear exactly, more like resignation. I asked, "Do you know this woman?" "No." "Did she break in?" "No." I didn't hear anything. I woke up, and she was there. My mind went to the usual possibilities, a hallucination, a bad dream bleeding into reality, maybe even someone high or drunk. But something about the way he said it. I believed him. "What does she look like?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, and when he did, it was almost a whisper. "She's not moving. She's just standing there. Her head's tilted." The line crackled faintly. "Sir, are you safe? Can you get to another room?" "No. If I move, she'll move." I didn't know how to respond to that. I've had plenty of strange calls over the years, but there was something in his voice that made my skin prickle. I tried again. "Where exactly is she?" "In the corner, right by the dresser." I clicked my pen, staring at the address on my screen. "Okay, officers are on the way. Just stay on the line with me until they get there." He exhaled sharply. "You don't understand. You can see her too, can't you?" The words caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "She's standing in the corner. I know you can see her." A knot tightened in my stomach. "Sir, I can't see anything from here. I'm just talking to you over the phone." There was a long pause. Then, flatly, "That's not true. I thought maybe he was disoriented. Listen, She's not looking at me anymore, he interrupted. She's looking at you. The room felt suddenly colder. I glanced over my shoulder. Ridiculous, I know, but I couldn't help it. My cubicle was empty. The hallway beyond was dark except for the faint glow from the vending machine. I forced my voice to stay steady. Sir, where are you right now? Can you describe the room? He started talking like he was reading my mind. You've got 2 monitors in front of you. There's a cup of coffee to your left. Half drunk. You keep looking at the door, even though you're trying not to. I froze. That's interesting, I said carefully. How do you know that? She's showing me. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. The rational part of me wanted to end the call. Transfer it. Let someone else deal with whatever this was. But another part, the part that always made me stay too long on the line, kept me there. Sir, what's your name? Evan. Okay, Evan. You said she's showing you my room. Yes. Can you tell me what she looks like now? She's still standing, but her face is wrong. It's like someone tried to draw it, but forgot the details. Her eyes, they're just smudges. I swallowed hard. All right, just keep talking to me. Officers will be there soon. She's moving, he said suddenly. Is she moving toward you? No, toward you. The line went dead silent. Not the kind of silence when someone's thinking. It was the silence of a call dropping. But it hadn't dropped. I could still hear faint static. Then, just barely, I heard something else. Not breathing, not speech. A soft, deliberate sound, like the shift of weight on carpet. In my own room, I spun in my chair, scanning the space behind me, the corners, the doorway. Empty. My pulse was hammering. I brought the phone back to my ear. Evan, are you still there? Yes, he said, but now his voice sounded different. Lighter, like he was farther away. Do you see her yet? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because for the first time in my life, as a dispatcher, I had no idea if I was still on my side of the call or his. The sound of footsteps came again. Closer. I almost hung up. I almost called over another dispatcher. But I couldn't break the line. And then I heard him whisper, "She's right next to you now." My throat went dry. I didn't turn around this time. I just stared at the glow of my monitor and my reflection in the black glass of the second screen. In the reflection, just for a second, I thought I saw someone standing in the corner behind me. The door to my left opened, and I jumped, but it was just one of the night shift officers, stepping in with a folder. I turned back toward my desk, and in that blink, the corner was empty again. I swallowed, forcing my voice to steady. Evan, officers should be at your location now. There was no answer. Evan, static, then a click. The call ended. When I pulled up the logs, my stomach dropped. The address Evan had given me? It didn't exist. Not anymore. The building had been torn down years ago, and the call hadn't come through the usual system. It hadn't come through at all. I knew from the second I picked up the call that this was going to be one of those nights. The kind that follows you home, that sticks to you even when you turn off the lights. His voice was already trembling when I said my greeting. She's facing me now. It wasn't a hello. No location. No name. Just that sentence. I sat up straighter. Sir, this is emergency services. Who's facing you? He was breathing fast, the sound jagged and unsteady through the line. The woman. She was in the corner, just standing there. But now he cut himself off, and I heard him swallow. Now she's looking right at me. I pulled up a blank incident form. Sir, I need you to tell me your location. He hesitated, like maybe he didn't want to take his eyes off her. My apartment. Second floor. 312 Hilford. I typed it in quickly, sent it to dispatch. While my fingers moved, my mind pictured it. A dark room, a shape in the corner. I've taken enough calls to know people hallucinate. Panic misread shadows. But there was something in his tone. Not just fear. Something heavier. Is she someone you know? I asked. No, his voice cracked. She's not right. I kept my tone calm. Can you describe her? Silence. Then, in a thin, shaking voice, her skin's too pale. Like paper. Her hands. He stopped again, and I heard the muffled scrape of something moving across carpet. She has long fingers. They don't look human. And her eyes. What about her eyes? They're black. Not dark. Not brown. Black. Like there's nothing behind them. I pressed my headset tighter against my ear. Where is she now? Another pause, and this time it was longer. His breathing had changed, quieter, shallower. She's closer, he whispered. Closer how? I don't remember her moving. A faint sound came through, something so soft I almost thought it was static, but it wasn't. It was wet, like the sound of someone's tongue moving against the roof of their mouth. Sir, can you get to a safe place? I can't move. If I move, she'll... His words broke, and I heard the quick rattle of him pulling the phone away and then back. Her mouth's open now. I swallowed. My own apartment was quiet around me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that if I turned my head, I'd see something in my peripheral vision. What is she doing? I asked. His voice dropped to barely more than air. She's smiling. I stared at the incident log, waiting for the responding officer's status to update. Nothing yet. Is there anyone else in the apartment with you? No, just me. A beat passed. And her. I heard a creak through the phone, the kind of sound old floorboards make when someone takes a step. She's not in the corner anymore, he whispered. Where is she now? No answer. I tried again, firmer this time. Sir, I need to know where she is. Another long pause. Right in front of me. I gripped my pen tighter. How close? She's leaning in. I was about to ask if she'd said anything when I heard a noise I still can't forget. A low, slow breath that wasn't his. It was too steady, too deliberate. I didn't even realize I'd stopped typing until the cursor blinked uselessly in the location field. She's whispering, he said. What's she saying? He swallowed, and a line crackled. I can't tell. It's not English. It's wrong. The sounds don't fit. Sir, I want you to slowly back away if you can. I can't. His voice broke entirely, turning into sharp, panicked gasps. I heard a thump, then a dragging sound. Sir, are you there? No answer. Just that breathing again, loud now. Wet. Heavy. Then, faintly, his voice. Do you see her too? I froze. That's not a question you expect to be asked by someone you've never met. What do you mean? I said carefully. You have to, he whispered. If she's looking at me, she's looking at you too. I felt my scalp prickle. The officers marked arrived on scene in the system. I didn't even realize I'd been holding my breath until I let it out. They're your door now. I told him. They'll come in and... The line went dead. I sat there for a moment, headset pressing into my skin, my own reflection staring back from the black monitor screen. A minute later, the update came through. Apartment empty. No sign of forced entry. Caller not located. And under notes, one of the officers had typed something that made my stomach twist. Chair in living room, facing corner. Fresh indentation and carpet opposite it, as if something heavy had been standing there. I didn't want to admit it, but something about the call had already gotten under my skin. The way he described her, the voice shaking as he spoke, it felt like he wasn't just telling me what he saw. It felt like he was handing it to me. Like, now that I'd heard it, I was carrying a piece of it too. I'd kept him on the line until the deputies got there, but when they entered the room, she wasn't there. They said he was sitting on the bed, breathing like he'd just run a mile, eyes darting to every corner. When they asked him to describe her again, it matched word for word what he told me earlier. Pale skin, long black hair hanging wet against her face. Black eyes, so dark you couldn't see the whites. Fingers too long, no shoes, and the way she just stood there, watching. They wrote it down, filed it away, but I didn't. I couldn't stop replaying it in my head. I stayed late that night, telling myself it was just to finish up paperwork, but the truth is, I didn't want to go home. The room felt quieter than usual. The hum of the fluorescent light was louder in the stillness, almost like it was pressing against my ears. The stack of reports in front of me blurred as I stared at them. I kept glancing toward the big window to my left, the one that looked out over the parking lot. It's not like I was expecting to see her, but I also wasn't expecting the tapping. It was faint. 3 little taps, like someone lightly flicking a fingernail against the glass. At first, I thought it was just some branch in the wind, but there were no trees close enough for that, and there was no wind. I froze with my pen halfway across the page. The sound came again. Not random this time. Rhythmic. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. My chair creaked when I turned to look. She was there, standing on the other side of the glass, the parking lot lights behind her. The glow made her edges sharp, but her face was in shadow. Not entirely, though. I could still see the pale skin, the hair clinging in wet strands, and the eyes, those black, depthless eyes, fixed directly on me. My breath caught so hard in my chest it actually hurt. I didn't move, didn't blink. She didn't either. It was like the call was replaying itself, except now I was the one trapped in the room. I remembered every word he'd said about her hands, and I swear I could see them clearer than anything else. Thin, too long, pressed lightly against the glass as she tapped again. I don't know how long I sat there, but it was long enough for my hands to go cold and numb on the desk. Finally, I reached for the phone. I didn't call 911. Ridiculous, I know, but the idea of explaining to my coworkers that there was a woman outside my window felt impossible. Like if I said it out loud, it would make it real in a way I couldn't take back. I just stared, and then she tilted her head. A slow, deliberate motion, like she was curious about something. I had this insane urge to look behind me, like maybe she was looking at something else in the room. But I couldn't move, couldn't turn away. She leaned forward until her face was almost touching the glass. And that's when I saw her mouth. It wasn't moving, not exactly. It was open, wide enough to see the darkened side, wider than a jaw should go. And there was this faint sound, almost like breathing, except it was wet. Too wet. I wanted to get up. I wanted to run out of the building and not come back. But before I could move, there was a voice. Not hers. The phone on my desk rang. The sound made me jump so hard my chair nearly tipped. When I looked back at the window, she was gone. I grabbed the phone with hands that didn't feel like mine. The line was already open, no ring on the other end, just breathing. I said hello. Nothing. Just that same wet, steady inhale and exhale. My stomach dropped. It was the same sound I'd just heard through the glass. I hung up. Then I did what I should have done from the start. I went to the door, yanked it open, and looked outside. The parking lot was empty. Not a single car but mine. Not a single shadow moving. And yet, when I stepped closer to the window from the outside, there were faint smudges, like fingerprints, long ones. I didn't tell anyone. Not that night. Not the next day. But I started keeping the blinds closed after dark. And every time the phone rang, I felt my stomach tighten, just for a second. The man from the call, they kept him for observation at the hospital. But before they took him in, one of the deputies told me something. He said the guy kept asking if we'd seen her too. Kept insisting she wasn't just there with him, that she could be anywhere. I tried to laugh it off, but my laugh sounded hollow, even to me. Because the truth is, I think I already had that. I've handled a lot of calls. I've heard people die through the phone before. It never gets easier, but also never happens like this. The room felt colder than it should have been. My headset pressed too tightly against my ears, the cord stretching like it was holding its breath. The clock on the wall ticked so loudly I thought I could feel it in my jaw. "Sir," I said into the mic, my voice quieter now. "Are you still with me?" There was no reply, just his breathing, ragged, shallow, every inhale trembling like he was trying not to cry. Then, softly, he said, "She's closer." I didn't want to ask. I didn't want the answer. But my mouth moved anyway. How close? Silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy. Then, she's in front of me. I pressed my nails into the desk. "You said she was in the corner." I blinked, he said. I just blinked. And now she's here. I swallowed hard. My throat hurt. I could hear something else in the background now. Not footsteps. Not shuffling. A wet sound. Slow. Like a drop of water hitting the floor. Over and over. "Sir, I need you to leave the room." "She's smiling," he whispered. "Her teeth are wrong." I wrote it down without thinking. My pen scratched the words "teeth wrong." He inhaled sharply. "Oh God, sir, she's tilting her head like she's listening to you." I froze. My pulse thudded in my ears. Listening to me? She's looking right at the phone, like she knows you're here. Something inside me sank. And then, faintly, from somewhere behind me in the dispatch room, I heard it, 3 soft taps on glass. I turned in my chair, so slowly it felt like my spine might splinter. The window beside my desk was just black, nothing but the reflection of my own face in the night outside. But the tapping came again. 1, 2, 3. My stomach knotted so hard I thought I might be sick. The man on the line let out a small, terrified whimper. She's smiling wider now. I stood without realizing it. My headset cord pulled taut. I kept my eyes on the glass. And then I saw her. Pale skin, hair so black it bled into the dark behind her. Her eyes too big, too black. Hands pressed flat against the glass, long fingers spread like she was about to push through. She was exactly how he'd described her. Exactly. My headset slipped slightly on my ear. "Sir, I see her." The line went dead silent. For a moment, I thought maybe he'd hung up. But then I heard him whisper, "You see her too." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My voice felt trapped somewhere deep in my chest. Her lips moved against the glass, but no sound came out. It was like she was mouthing something just for me. I couldn't tell what. And then, she was gone. Not walked away. Not faded. Just gone. The man screamed in my ear, and at that exact moment, my phone line cut out. Dead tone. I ripped my headset off just as the backup phone, the one that never rings unless the main system fails, lit up bright red. My hand hovered over it for only a second before I picked up. "Dispatch, what's your—" Nothing. No sound. No static. Not even breathing. Then a click. And the same wet sound I'd heard earlier. Slow, steady drops. I hung up, my fingers shaking. The main phone blinked back on, caller ID flashing the man's number again. I answered so fast, I almost tore the cord out. "Sir," he was screaming. Full, raw panic. I could hear furniture crashing, the thud of feet on the floor. "She's," he started, but the word cut in half. Static swallowed him. I heard something underneath it, like someone else breathing right against the mic. Then, in the faintest, softest voice, a woman said, "Don't hang up." I did. I don't know why. Instinct. Reflex. But the second I slammed the receiver down, the backup line rang again. I stared at it, my heart pounding against my ribs so hard it hurt. My hand was already moving before I could think. When I picked up, I didn't say a word. Neither did the caller. Just breathing. Then tapping. Not on glass this time. On wood. It took me too long to realize it matched the sound of my own desk. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. I looked down. Nothing was there. But when I glanced at the window again, she was back. Closer. Her face filled the glass now, her black eyes locked on mine. Her breath fogged the pain between us. Her lips moved again, slower this time, like she wanted me to really understand. And I did. She was saying my name. The phone in my hand went dead. Both lines cut off. At the exact same second, I stepped back from the desk, my whole body buzzing with adrenaline. My breath came out in short, sharp bursts. The dispatch room felt wrong now. Too quiet. The air too thick. The hum of the monitors sounded deeper, like it was coming from under the floor. Then the lights flickered. Just once. When they came back, the glass was empty. I stayed there for, I don't know how long. Long enough that the clock above me clicked past another hour. Long enough for my legs to start aching. The phones didn't ring again. And that man, the one who called, they never found him. But every night since, around midnight, I hear those 3 taps on the glass. And I never look right away. Because I already know what I'll see.it was just after midnight when the first call came in. I'd been leaning back in my chair, sipping cold coffee and staring at the quiet dispatch board, when the phone broke the silence. The tone was sharper in the dark, more sudden. I hit the line. "County Dispatch, what's your emergency?" For a second, all I heard was breathing. Not panicked at first, more like someone standing very still, try to listen for something else. Then, in a low, trembling voice, a man said, "They're back." I frowned. "Sir, I'm sorry. Who's back?" "The shadows," he said. And then his voice cracked, like he was afraid just saying the word might make them notice. "They're in my yard again." At first, I thought it was one of the regulars, lonely night owls who called in just to talk. But there was something about his tone that didn't fit the usual small-town drunk dial. This wasn't slurred or rambling. This was tight, wound up. I sat forward. "Where are you calling from?" He gave me an address out on County Line Road, almost at the border of our jurisdiction. It was nothing but farmland and patches of woods out there. No streetlights. No gas stations. just long stretches of black. Okay, sir, I said. Can you tell me exactly what you're seeing? He whispered. They're standing near the trees, just past the fence. They don't move unless I look away. The line hissed faintly. No background noise, no crickets, no wind. Just him. I typed the call details for the deputy, still trying to keep him talking. When you say shadows, they're not people, he interrupted, his voice sharp now. People don't look like that. They don't bend like that. Something cold trickled down my spine. Sir, are you inside your home right now? Yes, he said, but the power's out. I paused. That didn't make sense. The dispatch screen showed no outages. Then, as I checked, the status board suddenly lit with alerts. Half the county reporting blackouts. I looked over at my partner across the room. She mouthed, "You seeing this?" I nodded. The man on the line started breathing faster. They're closer now. 2 of them. I try to keep my voice even. Sir, is your door locked? Yes, he whispered. Then, softer, but they don't use doors. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? They just come in. I was about to ask more when I heard something faint, like a dull thud through the phone, followed by a slow scraping sound. His breath hitched. They're in the yard, he said. No, closer. I can see their faces now. Faces. I didn't know why, but the word made my skin crawl. What do they look like? Wrong, he said. Like someone drew them from memory and got every detail just slightly off. The scraping grew louder. Then he gasped, voice breaking. It's looking at me. I stood from my chair without realizing it, like somehow that would help him. Sir, stay on the line. A unit is on the way. He didn't answer. Instead, I heard the faint creak of wood, like a step on old floorboards, and then a long pause. When he spoke again, it was so quiet I almost missed it. There's no power here, no lights for miles, but I can see it perfectly. The way he said it, calm but hollow, made the hair rise on my arms. A sharp click came from the other end. Then silence. Sir, I called. Hello. Nothing. I stared at the dead line, the quiet of the room pressing in around me. Then the phones lit up. 3 lines at once. Then 5. Then all of them. Every single incoming call reporting the same thing. Power out, movement outside, figures in the dark. Some said they were tall. Some said hunched. But every single one mentioned the same detail. When they looked directly at them, the shapes didn't move. When they looked away, they were closer. One woman whispered that something was breathing against her bedroom window, even though she lived on the 2nd floor. Another man said he'd gone for his shotgun, but when he came back, there were 2 more in the yard. The air in dispatch felt heavier. I could see my partner's hands shaking as she took call after call, her voice getting thinner each time. Outages were spreading on the board, little red blocks blinking until nearly the entire map was dark. No storm, no wind, no reason. I kept thinking about the first man, the way his voice had cracked on the word faces. I didn't tell anyone in the room, but I kept glancing at our own windows. Out here, we weren't exactly in the center of town. Just a squat, square building off a Tulane road, with nothing but empty fields on 3 sides. From my desk, I could see my reflection in the dark glass. And I kept thinking if something was standing out there, I wouldn't know until it wanted me to. The calls kept flooding in, overlapping each other until it was just fragments of fear in my ears. They're by the shed now. Don't let them in. No, it's not a person, it's not. And beneath it all, that low, steady breathing from the first call still replayed in my head. It wasn't just panic. It was like he'd already accepted something. Like he knew help wouldn't get there in time. I don't remember the last time I felt that same weight in my chest. Not until that night. Because that night, the dark wasn't empty. It was waiting. The thing about nights like that is they don't just happen. They hang over you. They settle into your bones. It was maybe 40 minutes after the first call, the man screaming about shadows in his yard, when the phone started lighting up again. At first, I thought it was the power company finally calling back to confirm the outage map. Maybe an officer checking in from the field. But when I answered, it wasn't any of them. It was a woman. Her voice was low, rushed, like she was trying to keep from being overheard. She said she lived out on County Line, near the old grain elevator. And she said something was moving in her yard. Not someone. Something. I asked her what she meant, because you'd be surprised how often people will use that word when they're just talking about trespassers. But she didn't hesitate. "It's too tall," she said. "Too thin. It's leaning forward when it walks. I can see its arms. They drag." She went quiet for a second, and I could hear this faint wind noise in the background, like the phone wasn't sealed properly to her ear. Then she added, almost like she regretted saying anything at all, "There's more than one of them." I started typing notes into the call log, but halfway through I froze. Because I realized the way she was describing them, the way her voice dipped at the same words, it was almost exactly the same as the man from earlier. Same tone, same weird emphasis on drag. Even the pauses between sentences felt familiar. I brushed it off. I had to. Coincidences happen. People repeat things they've heard from neighbors. But then she said something that made my stomach knot. "They're standing by the fence now. They don't look like they're breathing." Those were his exact words. The man from the first call. Not just close, exact. I asked her to stay inside, keep her doors locked, and told her units were being dispatched. But when I tried to patch her through to the responding deputy, the line hissed and went dead. I didn't even have time to take a breath before the next line rang. It was a different number, different caller ID, different address. But the voice, it was a man this time, older. He said he lived about 5 miles south, closer to the river bend. And he started describing, without me even asking, the same shapes. Tall, thin, arms dragging, leaning forward when they moved. Same words, same rhythm. It felt wrong in a way I couldn't put my finger on. Like when you're talking to a friend and you realize halfway through that they're quoting something, word for word. I asked him if he'd heard about the outage or maybe spoken to a neighbor, and he swore up and down that his phone line had just started working again after hours of silence. That this was the first call he'd made. And then, like it was rehearsed, "They're standing by the fence now. They don't look like they're breathing." I swear my throat closed. I felt my heart beating in my fingertips. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted it to be some weird coincidence, like maybe they were all looking at the same news post, reading the same thing aloud without realizing it. But I knew there was no news post. The outage had wiped out every modem, every router, every tower within miles. There wasn't even cell service. Every call I was getting was landline only, and those don't copy themselves. By the fourth call, I stopped pretending it was normal. I kept my headset on, but hit the mute button for a second just to look at the log screen. 4 numbers, 4 names, for different addresses scattered across a 20-mile stretch of county line. And every one of them had spoken the same words in the same voice. Not similar, not close enough, the same. I unmuted just in time to hear the man on the other end breathing like he'd been running. He said the shadows had moved closer, that they were past the fence now, in the yard. And when he said it, it was his voice. But I swear I heard hers underneath it. That same woman from the second call, layered under his words, like an echo that wasn't his own. I started writing everything down by hand after that. Not just in the call log, but in my notebook, the one I keep for the weird stuff that doesn't fit into the official system. Timestamps, addresses, exact phrasing. It felt like if I didn't put on paper right then, it would vanish from my head. Or worse, change into something else. Call 5 came in at 10:17 p.m. Call 6 at 10:24. 7 and 8 came back-to-back at 10:31 and 10:32. Different names, different numbers, same voice. Every single time, the last thing they'd say was, "They're standing by the fence now. They don't look like they're breathing." I tried tracing the lines, but half the calls weren't even routing through the correct exchanges. It was like they were skipping the normal infrastructure entirely. And the strangest part? None of the deputies I'd sent out could reach the addresses. One by one, they radioed back saying the roads were blocked. Not by trees or down poles. Just blocked. Like the road ahead wasn't there anymore. One deputy swore he'd driven the same stretch twice, and it had somehow looped him back to the starting point. Another said every landmark past a certain mile marker was just gone. The fences, the mailboxes, even the gravel shoulder. It was just black, like driving into a space that hadn't been built yet. And meanwhile, the calls kept coming. By the time I got to call 11, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I started asking them questions I hadn't before, questions I thought might trip them up if they were repeating something pre-recorded. What's your name? What's your birthday? What's your neighbor's name? They all answered, but their voices stayed the same. Same pitch, same breath patterns, like they were sharing the same lungs. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until I dropped my pen and had to feel around under the desk for it. The office felt colder, not like the air conditioning, more like the cold you feel when you step into a basement. And then, call 12. This one was different. For the first 30 seconds, it was silent. I thought maybe the outage had cut the line mid-ring. Then a faint static. And then, clear as day, they're not by the fence anymore. I didn't breathe. Not until the voice continued. They're closer now. They're almost at the door. I swear it wasn't just similar anymore. It was exactly the voice from the very first call of the night. I heard him. And under him, I heard her. And under her, I heard the old man. Like every voice from the night was speaking at once, stacked together until they were one. I asked, because I had to, what do they want? And that's when the line laughed. Not loud, not mocking, just this small, breathy sound that didn't belong to any of them. I could feel my skin pulling tight across my arms. The kind of fear that's not about what's happening now, but about what's coming next. Before I could say anything else, the line went quiet again. And in that silence, I heard something faint on my end, like a shuffle, from somewhere in the dark part of the office. I looked up. Nothing. But I kept the receiver to my ear because the silence felt worse without it. And then, the voice, all of them, said, "You'll see them soon." The click that followed was so loud in my ear, I nearly tore the headset off. I sat there, staring at the empty lines on the console, my reflection faint in the dark window. I didn't want to turn around. I didn't want to look outside, because the fence around our own station yard isn't far from my window. And if I looked, and they were there, and they weren't breathing, I wasn't sure I'd be able to speak again, that I've been working dispatch long enough to know the quiet doesn't mean safety. Sometimes it's worse than the noise. That night, the quiet had teeth. It was just after midnight, the kind of hour where your body feels like it's running on fumes, but your mind keeps you sharp because something in your gut is chewing at you. County line was still dark, every mile of it. The blackout had been going on for hours now. We've been getting calls all night about shadows, moving through yards, fields, and back roads. Most of those reports sounded frantic, but not insane. These weren't the usual meth heads or prank calls. These were sober, terrified people. The same shapes, the same way they moved, the same voice. That voice. By the time we hit midnight, it was the thing I couldn't stop thinking about. The first few calls I brushed it off. Bad reception, cross lines. Maybe my brain was tired and filling in the blanks. But after 6, 7, 9 calls, it was undeniable. Different names, different locations. Same strange cadence in the way they spoke. Like the words came out in little jolts, like something was pushing the air out of their lungs instead of them breathing. I was still replaying the last one in my head when the lights in the center flickered. It was just a pulse, a quick stutter of darkness that swallowed the room for less than a second. But it felt wrong. The generator here is industrial grade. I've been through storms, floods, and even a gas explosion down on Route 6 without seeing that happen. Mara, who was on the desk across from me, glanced up from her screen. "You see that?" she asked. I nodded. Probably nothing. Maybe the surge from the grid. But even saying it felt like a lie I didn't believe. The air felt heavier. Not hotter, not colder. Just heavier. I didn't notice the whispers until they cut into my thoughts like a needle in a cloth. They weren't coming from the room. They weren't coming from the street outside. They were in the headset. I had the receiver in its cradle, but the whispers still hissed faintly through the thin foam of the earpiece, just enough for my ears to catch when I turned my head. At first, I thought maybe one of the lines had been left open, some glitch keeping a caller's background noise on a loop. But it wasn't background noise. It was breathing. Then words. Soft. Layered. Too many voices speaking too close together, so they bled into one another like watercolors left out in the rain. I couldn't make them out at first. Just that low, constant muttering. I picked up the headset slowly. County dispatch. Who's on the line? The whispers didn't stop. If anything, they leaned in closer. Closer, closer, closer. I froze. My knuckles tightened around the cord without realizing it. Mara was watching me now. "You okay?" I didn't answer. The voices weren't coming from a single caller. It sounded like they were sitting right inside my ears. In the walls, in the fields, in the dark. Then, clearer than before, one of them spoke in that same voice I'd been hearing all night. The one that didn't belong to any one person. "You're not safe in there either." The line clicked dead. I swear, the room felt colder after that. Not in a temperature way, but in the way your stomach drops when you realize something has been watching you for longer than you knew. Before I could even put the headset down, another call lit up my board. Line 3. County Dispatch. There at the door. The voice was flat, not frantic. Too calm. "Don't look out the windows." "Sir, who is this? What's your address?" The pause was so long, I thought the line had died again. Then, in that same strange cadence, "You'll see them soon enough." The line dropped. Mara must have noticed the color drain from my face because she was up from her chair, moving toward me. "What's going on? You're pale." I didn't answer. Another call lit up. Then another. And another. Each time, I'd answer, and the voices would all sound like them. Some claimed they were miles apart. Some didn't give locations at all. Some just whispered the same phrases over and over. "They're closer now. They know you're watching. They're in the dark." Once, I thought I heard my own name. And then, the lights flickered again. Only this time, they didn't come back fully. Half the room went black. The glow from the monitors threw sharp, unnatural shadows across the walls. The air smelled faintly metallic, like the moment before a lightning strike. And the whispers? They didn't stop. They got louder. Mara's headset slipped from her hand as she pressed her palms against her ears. "Make it stop." I was about to tell her to unplug, to cut power, when I realized something. The whispers weren't just in the headsets anymore. They were in the room, somewhere behind me. I didn't turn right away. It felt like the air itself was vibrating. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear in my teeth. When I finally did turn, there was nothing. Just the shadows stretching long and strange across the walls. But they were moving, not with the flicker of the failing lights. Not like shadows should. They were bending, curling, like they were reaching for something. I took my headset off, slammed it down, and backed away from the desk. The whole time, those shapes on the wall shifted in a way that made my stomach churn. The generator kicked, but instead of the full lights returning, the overheads pulsed once, then went black. The only light left was the dim, flickering glow from the monitors. And in that glow, the shadows looked like they had faces. Not full ones, just the impression of eyes. Watching. Somewhere in the dark, a voice, not through the headset this time, but right there in the room, whispered in that same eerie tone. "You can't turn the lights back on." I don't know if Mara heard it too. She was pressed back against the wall, her breathing sharp and fast. I wanted to grab her, to pull her toward the exit, but the moment I took a step, the monitors all went black. Pitch darkness swallowed us. And the whispers filled it. I didn't sleep. None of us did. After the whispers in the headsets last night, the shift was a blur of strange, static-filled calls and the feeling that we were being watched. Not just here in the dispatch center, but by something bigger. It wasn't paranoia. We all felt it. By the time the phones finally went silent, it was maybe 4 a.m. I remember staring at the wall clock, thinking how still it looked. The second hand barely seemed to move, but when I blinked, 10 minutes had passed. That kind of thing shouldn't happen. Time shouldn't feel like that. We sat in the dim glow of the backup lights, waiting for the sunrise. Waiting for something familiar to break this long, awful night. Outside, the world was silent. No crickets. No wind in the trees. Not even the hum of a generator. Just nothing. Some of the guys cracked open the blinds to check the horizon. The first thin line of orange should have been there by now. It wasn't. Instead, the sky was still black. Not a deep navy that comes before dawn. No. This was a solid, suffocating black. The kind that eats light. We kept telling ourselves it was the weather. Maybe a storm rolling in, maybe heavy clouds. But when I stepped outside for a smoke, the air was clear. I could see the stars overhead, but only when I looked straight up. The horizon, where the sun should be rising, was just gone. At 5:45 a.m., the first call came in. A woman from a nearby farm. She whispered like she was afraid the dark would hear her. "It's still night here," she said. "My sister lives 2 towns over, and she says the sun's up for her. I don't think it's coming here." Her voice shook. She asked if we could send someone to check. I told her to stay inside, keep her lights on, then caught myself. There was no power out there. She laughed nervously when she remembered. "Right, lights. I forgot." Then she hung up before I could ask more. At 6:12 a.m., more calls. Same report. Same shaky voices. It wasn't just one farm, or one street, or one little stretch of county line. It was the entire blackout zone from last night. People described it differently, but they all meant the same thing. It wasn't cloudy. It wasn't foggy. It was like the sun had skipped over them entirely. One man swore he could see daylight in the distance, just miles away, but it never reached his house. "It's like the light's bending around us," he said, "like it's avoiding this place." I didn't tell him that the same thought had been clawing at the back of my mind since the first call. By 7 o'clock, half our lines were tied up with people from the dark zone. Most of them weren't even asking for help anymore. They just wanted to be heard, like they needed someone to confirm they weren't insane. Some sounded exhausted, like they hadn't slept in days. Some were crying, and a few were strangely calm. Too calm. Those ones would say things like, "It's better this way," or "It's safer here in the dark." When I asked what they meant, they'd go silent. And if I pushed, they'd hang up. Around 8 a.m., the deputy on patrol radioed in from the edge of the blackout zone. I could hear the unease in his voice. He said he'd driven right up to the line where the dark met the light. It wasn't gradual like dawn breaking. It was a sharp divide. One side, daylight. The other, pitch black. And it wasn't quiet on that line. He said he could hear faint movement in the dark. Branches breaking, dirt shifting, slow footsteps circling. But when he shined his flashlight in, it barely reached a few feet before the beam just stopped. Like the dark swallowed it. He didn't cross. Not after what happened to the last officer who got curious in a blackout zone. By 9:30, more strange reports started coming in from inside the dark area. People were saying the shadows, the same moving shapes from last night, were still there. But now they weren't just in the yard or on the street. They were inside the houses. One man swore he saw a long, thin arm reach under his bedroom door. Another said he could hear something breathing in his bathroom, even though the door was locked and the windows sealed. But the one that stuck with me came from a kid. Couldn't have been older than 8. His voice was small, shaking. He said, "They told me they don't like the sun. That's why it's still night here. They said they made it stay dark for us." I asked who they were. He went silent. Then I heard whispering on the other end, but it wasn't in his voice. The line went dead. We kept expecting someone higher up to call with answers. State police, emergency management, anybody. But the only thing we got was a short message from the power company. Blackout area still without service. Cause undetermined. Estimated restoration unknown. That was it. No mention of the fact that the sun hadn't risen there. No acknowledgement of the hundreds of calls about the same thing. It was like no one wanted to talk about it. By noon, the dark zone was still dark. And now the reports were slowing down. Not because people weren't calling, but because the calls that did come in weren't right. They'd start normal. A voice we recognized from earlier. Then, mid-sentence, their tone would shift. Too flat. Too steady. They'd start saying things like, "You shouldn't look for us." Or, "Don't bring the sun back. It's not for you anymore." And always, before they hung up, the same line. "You'll see soon." The deputy who'd gone to the edge earlier tried to get a drone in, see if the camera could pick up anything from above. He said the footage came back as nothing but static once it crossed into the dark. Not even black screen, just scrambled gray and white fuzz, like the drone didn't exist anymore in there. He didn't try again. By 3 p.m., we got our last call from inside the zone. At least, the last one where the voice still sounded human. It was the woman from the farm, the first one who'd called that morning. She was crying. She said the shadows were inside now, that they'd been circling her kitchen table for hours, whispering things she couldn't understand. She said the air felt thicker, harder to breathe. And then she said something that made my stomach twist. "They're standing at the windows now. All of them. Like they're waiting for something." Her voice broke into a whisper. They keep looking up, like they're waiting for the dark to move again. Then a noise. Low, rumbling, like the sound you hear right before a thunderstorm hits. But deeper, and she screamed. The line went dead. The sun set everywhere else hours later. But in the blackout zone, there was no change. It stayed the same. A sealed-off pocket of endless night. The calls haven't come back since. No one's answered the door there. No one's been seen leaving. And here's the part one can't stop thinking about. This morning, when I drove in for my shift, I could see it from the highway. A massive dome of darkness, sitting over county line like a bruise. The world around it bright, the sunrise burning gold. But inside, nothing. And I swear, as I drove past, I saw shapes moving along the edge. Not shadows this time. Figures. And they were standing still, facing the light, like they were waiting. Like they knew the sun would be gone for all of us one day, that I've taken strange calls before. That's what happens when you work nights at a rural dispatch center. You hear people in the middle of panic, grief, confusion. You hear things no one's supposed to hear. Sometimes it's drunks calling about raccoons in their kitchen. Sometimes it's worse. A lot worse. But the night it called me, I stopped thinking of the line as a piece of equipment. It felt alive. It was just past 2 a.m. The floor was quiet except for the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. I was on my third cup of coffee, leaning back, listening to the faint static in my headset. No calls for almost an hour. That's rare, even for a weeknight. The screen in front of me glowed soft blue. My own reflection stared back in the glass, faint, almost ghost-like. Then, the phone lit up. Line 3. No location data. No caller ID. That happens sometimes with old landlines, but something in my gut tightened before I even touched the headset. I don't know why. 911. What's your emergency? There was a pause. Not the kind where someone's trying to collect themselves, but like they were waiting for me to speak again. Then, I heard it. My own voice. You're in my seat. I froze. It wasn't just similar. It wasn't just someone doing an impression. It was my exact voice, the same tone, the same rhythm, even the way I breathed between words. I swallowed. Who is this? A soft laugh came through. My laugh. The one I give when I'm not sure if someone's joking. I'm the real one, it said. You're just sitting there, pretending. My pulse thudded in my ears. I try to keep my voice level. Sir, this line is for emergencies. If you don't remember, do you? It interrupted, still in my voice. You don't remember what happened before you woke up here. Something about the way it said, woke up, made my mouth go dry. I'm going to end this call, I said, already reaching for the button to disconnect. But before I could, it said, if you hang up, you'll vanish. I'll get my seat back. I didn't press the button. My hand just hovered there. Whoever you are, I said slowly. This is a recorded line. Silence. Then a whisper. Look at your hands. I don't know why I listened, but I did. They were trembling. That wasn't unusual after a disturbing call, but what made me shiver was that for a moment, I didn't recognize them. The skin looked wrong under the fluorescent light. Too pale, almost waxy. I blinked hard, shook my head. This is harassment, I said, trying to sound like I was back in control. If you call again, You'll what? The voice was playful now. You'll tell someone? And what will you say? That you spoke to yourself on the phone? That the other you knew things? My breath caught. What things? I asked. The voice lowered, almost gentle. Your apartment smells like dust right now. The couch is still wet from when you spilled coffee earlier. There's a black hair stuck to the bathroom sink that isn't yours. I swear to God, Salah, my apartment did smell like dust. And the couch was still damp from the spill before I left for my shift. And I live alone. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear. Who are you? I said again, but my voice cracked this time. It didn't answer right away. I could hear it breathing, my breathing perfectly in sync with mine. Then it whispered, almost tender. You'll find out when I get there. The line went dead. I just sat there for a while, staring at the empty screen. My reflection looked back at me again, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. I told myself it was some prank. Someone who knew me. Maybe even someone on the floor messing with me. Though the thought of another dispatcher hacking the lines was, well, impossible. At least it should have been. I thought about calling a supervisor, but what would I say? Hey, someone just called in with my voice and said I'm not real. I'd be sent home for stress leave, no question. So I stayed. About 15 minutes later, line 3 lit up again. Same no ID. I almost didn't answer. But I did. 911. What's your emergency? This time, there was no pause. You move my mug. I nearly dropped the headset. What? My mug, it said. The chipped one. The one you keep at the far left corner of the desk, so it doesn't touch the paperwork. You put it in the middle last night. I did. I'd never told anyone that. It's just a habit I've had since I started here. I could hear typing in the background of the call. Keys clacking, just like the ones in front of me. Where are you? I asked, my voice shaking. I'm at the desk, it said. No, I'm at the desk. It laughed again, my laugh, but colder this time. Not for long. And then, this part I'll never forget, the typing on the line and the typing in front of me stopped. At the exact same time. Like, the me on the other end had just taken their hands off the keys. The rest of the shift was a blur. Every time the phone rang, my stomach knotted, expecting it to be them again. A few real calls came in, the domestic dispute, a drunk driver report, but I kept half my mind on line 3. It didn't ring again. Not until the last 5 minutes before my shift ended. 3:55 a.m. I was exhausted. My coffee was cold. The floor was quiet again. And then, the light blinked. Line 3. I didn't want to pick up. I knew it was them. But my hand moved anyway. 911. What's your emergency? I heard the scrape of a chair. My chair. Then, I can see you. My throat tightened. Where are you? Look behind you. Every muscle in my body locked up. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The room was small. If someone was behind me, I'd have heard them come in. Still, I felt it. That pressure you get when someone's watching. I'm not going to play your game, I said, trying to sound steady. A pause. Then, in the softest voice, so soft I almost didn't hear it. You've already lost. The line went dead. When my relief came in, I didn't tell them anything. I just grabbed my jacket, avoided looking at my reflection in the glass, and walked out into the cold. But as I reached my car, I glanced up at the dispatch center window. And for half a second, I swear I saw someone sitting in my chair. Someone who looked exactly like me. I didn't want to answer the call. Not after the first one. It had been 2 days since the voice, my voice, told me I was sitting in a seat. Since then, I've been running on caffeine and nerves, telling myself it was a prank, some freak technical glitch, something that could be explained if I dug deep enough. But deep down, I already knew it wouldn't make sense. The dispatch center was quieter tonight. 3 of us on shift. Lights dimmed. Outside, a thin sheet of rain tapped the windows like 1,000 fingernails. I kept catching my reflection in the black glass, pale, tired, almost colorless. Every time I looked away, I swore the reflection lingered a moment too long, as if it was watching me leave. Calls have been slow. Car accident earlier. Domestic disturbance an hour ago. Now, nothing but the hum of equipment and the occasional creak of the old HVAC system. And then, at 2:14 a.m., my line lit up. I froze. The caller ID just read. Unknown. I told myself not to be stupid. People call from block numbers all the time. I put on my headset and clicked in. 911. What's your emergency? For a moment, silence. Then a breath. My breath. You moved the coffee mug. My stomach dropped. The voice was me again, exactly me. Excuse me. I tried to keep my voice steady, professional, like this wasn't happening. Your coffee mug, the voice said, slow, deliberate. You moved it from the left side of the keyboard to the right. About 3 inches. I looked down. My hand was still curled around the mug, warm against my fingers. It was on the right. I had moved it absent-mindedly a few minutes ago, pushing it away from the edge so it wouldn't spill. Who is this? I asked, already knowing I wouldn't get a real answer. It's me, the voice said. It's you. A faint ringing started in my ears. I glanced toward Mark, the guy on the next console over, but he was leaning back in his chair, scrolling through something on his phone. He hadn't noticed anything. Tell me what you want, I said. I told you, the voice said calm, almost bored. You're in my seat. I'm coming back for it. Something about the way he said coming back made my chest tighten. I forced a short laugh. Yeah? And where are you now? Right behind you. I didn't turn. I couldn't. My muscles locked. My peripheral vision showed nothing but the glow of my monitors and the vague shape of Mark. Look at the window, the voice whispered. I turned slightly toward the glass, just enough to catch my reflection. It was me. Of course it was me. But my reflection wasn't holding the headset mic near its mouth. Its lips were moving anyway. I yanked my eyes away. My pulse was pounding so hard I could hear in my skull. Stop, I said. I don't know who you are or how you're doing this, but if you keep calling this line, you're... Chill. The voice cut me off. You just scratch your eyebrow with your left hand. There's a pen under your keyboard, black casing, cracked clip. You keep it there because you think it's lucky, but you never use it. I reached under the keyboard without thinking. My fingers closed around the pen. Cheap plastic, cracked clip, exactly like he said. I had forgotten it was even there. I'm looking at you right now, the voice said. Every freckle, every scar. I pushed back from my desk and stood. My chair rolled a few inches before stopping against the console. Mark finally looked over. You good? He asked. I forced a nod and covered the mic with my hand. Yeah, just weird call. He shrugged and went back to his phone. I sat back down, but I didn't put the headset on my ears this time. I kept it around my neck, the voice still faint but clear. You're wondering if you should check the hallway, it said. But you won't, because you know it'll be empty. I looked toward the hallway anyway. A long stretch of fluorescent light leading to the exit. No movement, no shadows, nothing. Why are you doing this? I asked. Because you're not supposed to be here, the voice said. You weren't supposed to get this job. You weren't supposed to last this long. I've been patient. The words crawled under my skin. I wanted to hang up, but I couldn't. My hand just wouldn't. Do you remember last Thursday? The voice asked. 2:36 a.m. car accident out on County Line Road. You sent help to the wrong mile marker. My throat tightened. I had messed up that night. A single-digit mistake in the address. The ambulance arrived 7 minutes too late. The driver died at the scene. The error was buried in paperwork. No one blamed me. But somehow he knew. I fixed it, the voice said. I made sure it still happened. Shut up, I hissed. You're not me, he said. You're the version that makes mistakes. I'm the one who was supposed to stay. And now I'm close enough to see the way your hands shake when you lie. I looked down. My hands were shaking. For the first time, I thought about the fact that there were no rules for this. If someone is watching you, describing you in real time, and you can't find them, what do you even do? I pulled the headset off and set on the desk. The voice went silent. For a second, I thought it was over. Then my desk phone rang. Not the headset, the desk phone. The one that rarely ever rang unless it was an internal transfer. I picked it up slowly. You didn't have to take off the headset, the voice said. I could see you just fine without it. A static crackle bled into the line, and under it, something faint, a rhythmic, slow tapping. Not from the phone, from inside the room. I set the receiver down without hanging up and scanned the room. Mark was still glued to his phone. The third dispatcher, Carla, was in the break room. The tapping got louder. 3 slow taps. Pause. 3 slow taps. It was coming from under my desk. I shoved my chair back, heart hammering. I crouched, half expecting, half dreading, to see a face in the shadows. But there was nothing, just a tangle of wires and my boots. The phone on my desk spoke again, louder now. Don't leave, it said. I'm not done showing you the room. My mouth went dry. I don't remember deciding to stand. I just found myself doing it, walking toward the hallway, my legs heavy like I was wading through water. I told myself I was going to the bathroom, but deep down I think I just wanted distance between me and that voice. Halfway down the hall, I heard my console headset click, the sound it makes when a call disconnects. Then, impossibly, the sound of my chair rolling back. Mark looked up from his phone. Did you just? I turned. From where I stood, I could see my console. The chair was back in position, headset resting on the desk. But the monitor was on a screen I'd never seen before. A black background with white text that read, "Welcome back." Then it went dark again. When I finally walked back to my seat, the pen under the keyboard was gone. In its place was a folded scrap of paper. I opened it with shaking hands. 3 words. I know more. I didn't answer him at first. Not because I didn't hear him, but because my brain refused to accept the words. Leave. Let me take over. They hung there in the air, flat and quiet, like something poisonous you could almost taste. My mouth went dry. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the flashing line on my console, the caller still on the other end. It wasn't just the fact that he sounded like me. I could have chalked that up to some kind of mimicry software, or maybe just an uncanny coincidence. No, it was the way he breathed. That rhythm. That little whistle at the end of each inhale, like the sound you hear when you've been talking too long and your throat's gone raw. It was mine. I forced myself to speak, keeping my voice low. You're telling me you want my job? He laughed. It was short, flat, exactly the way I laugh when something unsettles me, but I'm trying to hide it. Not your job, he said. Your place. My eyes flicked to the corners of a room, the dim edges where the overhead lights didn't quite reach. It was a habit I'd picked up in the past day, ever since that first call. I half expected to see someone standing there, watching. But the room was empty. I don't know what you think you're doing, I said. But this isn't. Look at the clock, he interrupted. I froze. My head turned slowly toward the wall clock above the door. The second hand was moving, normal, steady ticks. Nothing strange. What about it? He didn't answer right away. I could hear him breathing. You always check the clock when you're trying to figure out what to say. You think the time will tell you how to feel. The hairs along my neck stood up. Because he was right. It's not something I've ever told anyone. Not something I even thought about until he said it. But yeah, when my mind goes blank or I need to steady myself, my eyes go to the clock. It's like the numbers give me something solid to hold on to. I didn't like that he knew that. What do you want from me? I asked. I already told you. Switch seats. That doesn't make sense. It will. Silence again. The hum of the air conditioner in the ceiling seemed louder. I pressed my tongue against my molars, another habit I've had since I was a kid, whenever I'm under stress. And then his voice again. You're doing it now. My heart sank. Doing what? Pushing your tongue against your teeth. Left side first, then right. You do that when you're deciding if you're going to lie. I could feel my face heat up. This wasn't possible. I was alone in that room. I had been for hours. I stood up, not because I was going anywhere. I just suddenly hated being seated. It felt like I was presenting myself to him, like he was standing over me. My headset cable tugged tight, keeping me tethered to the console. This is some kind of prank, I said. Someone's feeding you this. No one's feeding me anything. I see you. The way he said it, slow, almost sad, made me shiver. I'm not playing this game. I reached for the disconnect button. If you hang up, he said, you won't be here when you look up. I froze, my finger hovering over the button. What? You'll still be in the chair. But it won't be you. I let my hand fall back to the desk. He continued, his voice soft, steady. You've been in that seat for what? For years now. You think you're doing good work. You think you're helping people. But you don't see it, do you? You've been bleeding out. Not all at once. Just a little each night. Every call, every scream, every silence that goes on too long. You've been leaking yourself away. You're empty now. I can fill that seat better than you can. It was insane. But I couldn't hang up. Because deep down, I knew what he meant. I had been feeling it lately. That hollowness when I clock in, the mechanical way my voice moved through the scripts we're trained to use. Some nights, I can't even remember the details of the calls I take. Just flashes, bits of sound. What happens if I switch? I asked before I could stop myself. There was no hesitation in his answer. You rest. You sleep. You stop thinking about all the things you couldn't change. You won't feel the weight anymore. Not the voices. Not the ones you missed. Not the ones who died while you were still talking to them. The room seemed smaller. My throat was tight. What happens to me? You won't care. I swallowed hard. And you? What happens to you? I keep the seat warm. The absurdity of the phrase made me want to laugh. But my mouth wouldn't cooperate. He spoke again. Stand up. Turn around. I didn't move. Stand up, he repeated. Against every instinct, I did. The headset cord tightened again, but I kept turning until I was facing the rest of the dispatch floor. Empty desks. Empty chairs. just the glow of idle monitors. My own reflection stared back from the darkened glass of the far window. Except it wasn't exactly mine. The shape was right. The posture. But the face had no light in it. No tension in the jaw. No tiny squint around the eyes from staring at screens too long. Just me, stripped of anything human. I blinked, and the reflection was gone. Just my normal, tired face looking back. My pulse was hammering now. I don't understand what you are, I whispered. You do, he said. You just won't say it. I shook my head. Switch seats, he said again. I can't. You can. He paused. You will. Something in his voice then, heavier than before, made me reach for the disconnect button again. But the line went dead before I touched it. No click, no fade, just silence. I yanked the headset off, my breathing sharp and uneven. The room felt wrong. Not haunted exactly, just occupied. Like if I turned too fast, I'd catch someone leaning in the doorway. I stayed standing for a long time, staring at the chair. It was just a chair. Black vinyl, cracked at the edges, one armrest a little looser than the other. But I couldn't bring myself to sit back down, because I kept imagining what it would feel like to lower myself into it, and find it already warm that IT happened so fast that, for a moment, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. The screens in front of me went black. Not a flicker, not a glitch, not the little frozen lag we get when the system updates itself at random. Just off, like someone had pulled the plug. I stared at the dark monitors, my reflection faint in the glass. The headset was still on my head, the soft weight of it pressing against my ears. But the usual quiet static was gone. In its place, there was nothing. Real nothing. The kind of silence that makes you think you've gone deaf. I tapped the keyboard. Nothing. Mouse. Nothing. The system had logged me out. I could see the login prompt when one of the screens came back. White text on a flat blue background. My ID box was empty. My password field waiting. But my fingers wouldn't move. Because in the silence of my dead headset, I heard it. A breath. Not mine. Too slow. Too deep. Hello. My voice sounded small in my own ears. For a second, there was no answer. Then, you're done now. It wasn't my voice this time. Not exactly. The voice that came through was different. Lower. Weighted. I'd never heard it before in my life. But it spoke like it had been here forever. Like it knew the room. The chair. Me. I froze, hand halfway to the keyboard. Who is this? A small laugh. Not mocking. Not loud. Just pleased. You've been keeping my seat warm. I looked over my shoulder instinctively. The room was empty. Everyone else had gone home an hour ago. The late shift was just me. I'd done it 100 times before without thinking twice. But now it felt wrong. I pulled the headset off, half expecting the sound to cut. It didn't. The voice came through still, clear as before. You've been working hard, but I think it's time you let me take over. I stared at the headset in my hands like it had just grown teeth. My palms were sweaty against the worn foam ear pads. Ow, my throat caught. I had to swallow before I could try again. How are you talking to me if I'm logged out? You're not. The way he said it made my skin crawl. Because it didn't sound like an answer to my question. It sounded like a correction. Like I wasn't logged out. Like I was the one logged in, and this thing was outside, waiting to replace me. I turned back to the monitor, my password prompt still glowing faintly in the dark. You can't stop it, he said. Once it starts. I tried to laugh, but caught in my chest. Right? Okay. Well, if this is some kind of prank. It's not. That single, flat sentence stopped me cold. You don't believe me, he said. That's fine. You will. And then, he started describing the room. Not the way the last voice had. Not a list of objects, but changes. Things that weren't there before. There's someone standing in the far corner, he said calmly. You can't see them yet, but they're watching your back. I spun in my chair so fast it nearly toppled. Nothing. You turned too quickly, he said. You missed it. The hairs on my arm stood up, so sharply I could feel them pushing against my sleeves. I stood up. I don't even remember making the choice. I just couldn't sit there anymore. I took 2 steps toward the door. That won't help, he said. I'm already in. And then the login prompt on my monitor disappeared. Not like it faded. Not like I entered my password. It just blinked, and my dispatch screen came back. But it wasn't my dashboard. The map was wrong. The layout was unfamiliar. My saved contacts, my recent calls, gone. In their place. Names I didn't recognize. Places I'd never heard of. The timer in the corner said 4 seconds and counting. Sit back down. I didn't move. Sit back down, or you'll lose it. I wanted to ask what it was. I wanted to demand answers, to push back. But my body didn't care what my brain wanted. I was already lowering myself into the chair. The headset was heavy in my hand. When I put it back on, I heard his breathing again. Steady. Patient. That's better, he murmured. Now we switch. My chest tightened. Switch what? You leave, he said. And I stay. You're insane. No, I'm here. And you're leaving whether you want to or not. The timer on the screen hit 20 seconds. A new voice cut in. Not his. Higher. Younger. Female. Dispatch, she said, sounding confused. Am I through? I froze. Because she wasn't calling from outside. She was calling from inside the line. I don't know how I knew that. But I did. The man's voice came back, right over hers. She's for me. You wouldn't know what to say. I shook my head, panic prickling behind my eyes. What are you talking about? This is my job. Not anymore. And then my screen dimmed. Slowly. Like the power was draining out of it drop by drop. The timer froze at 33 seconds. Stand up, he said. My hands tightened on the edge of the desk. No. His breathing deepened. You don't want to see what happens if you don't. I wish I could tell you I stood my ground. I wish I could say I yanked the headset off, walked out, never looked back. But the truth is, I stood. I don't even remember my feet moving, but the next thing I knew, I was at the door, one hand on the frame. My monitors were still dimming behind me, and in the faint glow, I saw a shape sitting in my chair. It wasn't a person. Not really. It was my outline. My posture. My shoulders. My hands on the desk. Exact. Like someone had poured me into a shadow mold and set it in my seat. The headset was on its head now, and the voice in my ear was no longer coming from the headset. It was coming from that. You could go home now, it said, smiling with my mouth. And the screen went black. When you start this job, they give you a little speech about respecting the chain of records. Every call, every report, every scrap of paper, we're told, has to be preserved, cataloged, and stored. Nothing gets tossed. Nothing gets forgotten. I believe them, at least for the first month. It was my third week on night shift, and they'd run out of things for me to do. There were no active calls, no real training left for me that didn't require a live situation. So my supervisor sent me into the archive room with a roll of paper towels, a bottle of industrial cleaner, and the vague instruction to tidy things up. The archive room sits at the very back of the dispatch center, past a short hallway nobody really walks down unless they have to. The walls are bare concrete, colder than the rest of the building, and the air feels heavier. I didn't think much of it at first. Inside, the room looked like a hoarder's garage. Steel shelves from floor to ceiling. Stacks of cardboard boxes labeled with thick black marker. Years written on the sides in block letters. Some shelves held plastic bins stuffed with loose reports. Others had binders, their spines yellowed, sagging from the weight of paper. The smell hit me hardest. It wasn't exactly bad, just old. Dust and paper, like the inside of a library that hasn't been touched in decades. It had that faint metallic tang that made me think of pennies. I started with the shelves near the door, wiping down boxes, moving things just enough to clean under them. Some were surprisingly light. Others were so heavy I had to drag them a few inches at a time. Half an hour in, I found myself near the back corner. That's when I saw it. A box sitting on the floor, pushed halfway under a bottom shelf like someone wanted it hidden. Unlike the others, it had no writing on it. No year, no case number, nothing. Just a plain, dusty cardboard box. It was sealed with one brittle strip of packing tape that had gone yellow at the edges. My first thought was that it was junk. Personal stuff from an old employee, maybe. But then I noticed how clean the floor around it was. No dust trails, no scuff marks, like someone had set it there long after the rest of the room had been filled. I crouched down, set my rag aside, and pulled it out. The cardboard was soft from age, the bottom sagging under the weight inside. The tape peeled away without much effort, and when I opened the flaps, a thin wave of stale air pushed up into my face. Inside were cassette tapes. Dozens of them. Black plastic, each one in a cheap clear case. No labels, no dates. Just stacks of them, neatly arranged. A few had faint smudges of something that might have been ink or maybe dried fingerprints. I picked one up. It was heavier than I remembered tapes being. On the bottom corner of the clear case, someone had scratched a little mark with something sharp. Not letters, just a single vertical line. I checked another tape. 2 vertical lines. The next 3, like they were numbered in a code only one person would understand. I didn't know why, but my chest tightened a little. There was nothing outwardly creepy about a box of tapes, but I couldn't shake the thought that I wasn't supposed to be looking at them. I carried the box over to the small table in the middle of the room and pulled one of the old portable tape recorders from the supply cabinet. Every dispatcher station has digital recording now, has for years, but the archive room still had a couple of the old players for converting past calls. The first tape clicked into place with a satisfying snap. I pressed play. At first, nothing. Just a low hiss of static, faint and uneven, like the tape had been partially erased. Then, somewhere under it, a voice. A man's voice. Calm. Almost too calm. There in the walls. The audio quality was bad, warbling in and out, but I could still make out his breathing, fast and shallow. He sounded like he was trying to whisper, but every so often his voice would spike, trembling as he repeated it again. There in the walls. I listened for a minute, waiting for a dispatcher's voice, some acknowledgement, but there was nothing. No one else on the line. Just him. The tape clicked off abruptly. No sign off, no intone. The second tape started differently. No static this time, just pure silence for a few seconds. Then a young woman, her voice sharp with panic. "He's in my house," she whispered. It wasn't the kind of panicked yelling you hear in movies. This was the kind of quiet fear where you're trying not to be heard. I waited for the dispatcher to say something. Nothing. Her voice came again, faster this time. "He's in the kitchen." A pause. Then a sound in the background, faint but real. A slow creak, like a door hinge. I stopped the tape. My palms were sweating. The odd thing was, none of these calls were logged in our system. We keep decades worth of backups, but I knew there was no unlabeled mystery tape category. Every call, even prank ones, gets tagged and stored. I picked another tape, number 6 in the scratch mark order, and pressed play. This one started mid-breath. A man sobbing quietly, muttering words I couldn't quite catch. His voice was rough, like his throat was raw from crying. Finally, I caught one phrase clearly. "Don't let him in." He repeated it over and over, his voice breaking on the last word each time. "Don't let him in. Don't let him in." Then a click. Not the tape ending. A click like another phone picking up on the same line. And then silence. The man stopped speaking. There was a long pause, so long I thought the tape might actually be blank. But faintly, deep under the hum of the recorder, I heard it. Breathing. Slow, steady, almost deliberate. It wasn't his breathing. It was heavier, closer to the recorder. I ejected the tape so fast it clattered against the table. I told myself it was probably just cross-recording. Old tapes sometimes pick up bleed from others stored nearby. But it didn't feel like that. The quiet, deliberate nature of that breathing felt aware. By now, my cleaner and paper towels were sitting untouched on the floor. I was leaning over the table, sorting the tapes into a neat line without really thinking about why. I picked one from the middle of the stack, 2 vertical scratches, and pressed play. Static. Then, faintly, what sounded like wind. It was hard to tell if it was environmental noise or just the tape's age, but after a few seconds, I started to make out a voice. A child's voice. Very soft, almost like singing. It was a simple, tuneless hum at first. Then the child spoke. "Are you still there?" I froze. It wasn't the words. It was the way they were said. Not like a question to a dispatcher. It felt like the voice was talking directly to me, now, here in the room. My mouth went dry. The child waited a beat. Then, louder, "I can see you." I slammed the stop button so hard the recorder tipped forward. The air in the archive room suddenly felt heavier, like the walls had moved in a few inches. I glanced toward the doorway, half expecting to see someone standing there. But the hall outside was empty. I looked back at the tapes. There were at least 30 left in the box, and each one suddenly felt dangerous. I told myself to put them back, tape up the box, and pretend I never saw it. That's what any smart rookie would do. But my hands didn't listen. I picked up another tape, stared at the faint scratches, and felt the same uneasy pull I'd felt since I'd first opened the box. There was no label, no record, no reason these should even exist. But they did, and someone had gone to the trouble of keeping them here, hidden, for years. I slipped the box under my arm, switched off the light, and left the archive room. I told myself I'd bring it to my supervisor in the morning. I didn't. Instead, I set it under my desk at my station, close enough to reach, close enough to keep listening. I didn't plan to play any of them. Not at first. After finding that cardboard box yesterday, I'd left it shoved under my desk like a dead thing I didn't want to touch. The tapes were coated in dust, unlabeled, just sitting there in their cracked plastic shells. No dates, no markers, nothing. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'd been at the dispatch center for 3 weeks. Still on the bottom rung, still the one they sent for coffee runs or to clean out the archive room because rookies need to learn the system. In that room, it had smelled like stale paper and something sour, like old sweat trapped in the carpet. There were rows of metal shelves sagging under the weight of folders, case files, recordings, evidence logs. But that box, it hadn't been on a shelf. It was tucked into the darkest corner behind an old mop bucket, like someone had put it there deliberately. All night, I kept wondering why. By morning, curiosity had beaten common sense. The thing about night shifts in dispatch, if the lines are quiet, your mind goes places it shouldn't. That night, my partner was out on a smoke break, and I was alone in the dim light of the console. The box sat on the desk beside me. I picked up the first tape. It was warm, not just room temperature warm, warmer than it should have been. I told myself it was just for my hands. That was easier than thinking about why a decades-old cassette might feel like it had been sitting in sunlight. I slid into the tape deck we keep for old call reviews. The machine gave a low hum, the reels catching with a soft click. There was no time stamp, no automated log ID, just silence. Then a voice, a woman. Her breathing was fast, shallow, like she'd been running. Hello, hello, I need, she stopped, and I heard something, someone, murmuring in the background. Too faint to make out. I reached for the volume dial. Please, you have to tell me what's happening, a man's voice said on the line. It wasn't a dispatcher I recognized. Our voices are all recorded, trained, steady. But his was tight, like he was just as scared as the caller. The woman sobbed. It's in the hallway again. It's watching me. The man on the line said nothing for a few seconds. Then, is the door locked this time? This time, I muttered. There was a noise then. A knock. Slow, deliberate. Once. Twice. 3 times. It didn't sound like a normal knock. Too heavy. Like something pressing its whole weight into the wood. I could feel my pulse in my neck. The woman's breath caught. It knows I'm talking to you. The man's voice dropped lower, barely a whisper. Don't hang up. Don't. A scraping sound cut through the line, sharp and metallic. Not like a door being forced. More like nails, long ones, dragging across metal. The woman screamed, and then the tape just stopped. No click, no fade out. Just cut. I sat there, staring at the spinning reels that had gone still. We log every call in this center. Every word, every noise gets archived with a date and an incident number. I pulled up our historical logs, scrolling back through the years. Nothing. No record of that voice. No record of that call. The hair on my arms prickled. I should have stopped. I should have shoved that tape back in the box and walked away. But I didn't. The second tape was shorter. It started mid-conversation. A child's voice, boy, maybe 7 or 8, saying, "It keeps knocking on my window." The dispatcher, again, not a voice I knew, asked, "What's outside, buddy?" The boy didn't answer right away. There was a long pause, just faint breathing. Then, softly, "You are." I felt my stomach drop. The dispatcher laughed nervously. "No, I'm at the station, remember? I can't be outside your window." But the boy just repeated it. "You are." And then, this sound I can't explain, like someone tapping the receiver from the other end, each tap perfectly in time with my own heartbeat. The dispatcher's voice cracked. "Can you describe what you see?" The boy said, "It's smiling, but it's not moving its mouth. I stopped the tape. I didn't want to hear the rest. I kept telling myself they had to be prank calls. Maybe some old training recordings that were too strange to keep on file. But if that was the case, why hide them? Why not destroy them? I don't know why I played the third one. Maybe because I wanted proof they were fake. Instead, it gave me the opposite. This one began with nothing but static. A slow hiss, like an untuned radio. Then the sound of wind, or maybe a breath too close to the mic. The dispatcher said, 911, what's your emergency? And then my stomach turned to ice. It was my voice. Not similar. Not a little bit like mine. It was me. Same tone. Same inflection. But it wasn't a call I'd ever taken. The me on the tape said, I need you to listen to me very carefully. And then, after a pause, they've been in here the whole time. The line went silent. Just that low hiss. I pressed stop and ripped the tape out. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped it. I looked at the box. There were still at least 20 more tapes inside. I should have locked them away, taken them to my supervisor. But my supervisor already thinks I'm too jumpy for the night shift. If I told him I found a box of tapes with impossible calls on them, he'd write me off as a rookie who couldn't handle the job. Still, I couldn't leave them out. I slid the tapes back into the box, taped the flaps shut, and pushed it under my desk again. Out of sight, I didn't touch them for the rest of my shift. But even when I was taking real calls, lost hikers, domestic disputes, a guy who swore his neighbor was stealing his mail, I kept hearing the voices from the tapes in the back of my head. That woman whispering about something in the hallway. That boy telling the dispatcher you were outside his window. And my own voice saying they'd been here the whole time. By the time my relief came in, I was too wired to sleep. I went home, sat on my couch in the dark, and stared at my phone. The thing about dispatch is you can't see the people you talk to. You just hear them, and you have to trust that they're telling you something real. That there's a physical, explainable problem you can send help to. But what if some calls aren't about a place you can send an officer? What if they're not about a place at all? That thought sat in my chest like a stone. When I came back from my next shift, the box wasn't under my desk anymore. I froze. I didn't move for a full minute, just scanning the room. My partner didn't mention it, and I didn't ask. But every so often, I thought I saw one of the other dispatchers glance at me a little too long. Around midnight, a manila envelope appeared on my desk. No name, no note. Inside were 3 cassette tapes. I told myself they were just old training reels. I told myself I wouldn't play them. Well, of course I did. The first one, more static than a whisper. Why did you put me in the dark? The second, just crying, endless crying, and a faint sound like someone turning a doorknob over and over. The third, it didn't start with a dispatcher's voice. It started with mine, and I was saying my own name, over and over, like I was trying to remind myself who I was. Then, finally, they'll use this voice when you stop answering. The tape clicked off. I sat there in the glow of the console lights, every sound in the room too loud, too sharp. My headset suddenly felt too heavy, like the cord was pulling me somewhere I didn't want to go. That was the first night I started checking the logs for my own calls, listening for any voice that sounded too much like mine. And I know, I heard it twice. Not exact, but close enough that I felt my throat tighten. The worst part is, I can't tell anymore if the voice is just on the tapes or if it's on the line, waiting for me to pick up that I almost didn't press play. I should have stopped after the first 2 tapes. I'd been at it for hours, hunched over that old cassette player in the archive room. The little reel spinning, my notepad filling with shaky handwriting I wasn't sure I wanted to read back later. I kept telling myself it was just curiosity. That's all. But the truth was, I couldn't stop. Every tape I played felt like peeling back another layer of something I wasn't meant to see. It was late. The building was quiet except for the hum of the air vent above me and the faint ticking of the wall clock. The overhead lights in the archive room were yellow and tired, buzzing every now and then like a reminder that I shouldn't be here after hours. I'd been going through the box 1 tape at a time. Most of them didn't even have dates, just faint pencil marks or nothing at all. And the calls. God, the voices didn't sound like the kind you get on a regular night shift. No drunk drivers, no domestic disputes, no lost hikers. These calls were wrong. People whispering about things in their house, that weren't supposed to move. Someone crying and repeating the same sentence over and over like a skipping record. One guy breathing too hard, asking me, no, not me, the dispatcher, if the moon could see him. None of them were in our logs. Not one. I told myself I'd listen to one more, just to get my mind off the guy with the moon question. One more. That's when I picked up the tape with no writing at all. Just blank. Like it had been waiting at the bottom of the box for me to find it. The plastic felt colder than the others when I slid it into the player. I pressed the button. Static at first. Then a voice. And I froze. It was mine. I mean, I know how that sounds. Of course, everyone thinks they know their own voice. And I've heard mine plenty on recordings from training sessions, radio checks, all that. But this was different. It wasn't like hearing an old voicemail. This was me. The pitch, the cadence, the little pauses I make when I'm thinking. Even the nervous habit I have of dragging out certain words. The only difference was I had no memory of saying any of it. 911, what's your emergency? That was my voice, clean and professional. A woman answered, and her tone made my stomach tighten immediately. She sounded breathless, frantic, like she was running from something but couldn't decide where to go. I think it's in my house, she whispered. What's in your house, ma'am? My voice asked. She hesitated. It's pretending to be my son. The tape hissed in the silence that followed, and I could hear myself breathing faintly in the background. Where's your son now? In his room, she said. But it's not him. I saw it through the crack in the door. Can you describe what you saw? I asked. The woman made a choking sound. It's smiling too wide. He never smiles like that. I swear, listening to it, I could feel my chest tightening, like I was right there on the line. Ma'am, is your door locked? My voice asked. Yes, but oh God. A thump, somewhere close to her in the background. Another. Then, the sound of a door creaking open. I heard her scream, and then, a voice. But it wasn't hers. It wasn't mine. It was a child's voice, high and cheerful, saying, Who are you talking to? The woman gasped something too muffled to catch. And then, she started repeating something over and over, faster and faster. Get out, get it out, get it out, get it out. The tape cut off mid-sentence. I sat there, staring at the player. My fingers were stiff on my knees. That was unsettling enough on its own. But then I realized something. That whole call, my side of it, wasn't just in my voice. It was exactly how I would have said it. Word for word, in the order I'd say it. Like muscle memory recorded on tape. And the worst part? I hadn't taken that call. At least not yet. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was another dispatcher who sounded like me. Maybe it was an old recording from training, spliced with some prank call. Except, dispatch calls aren't stored on cassette. They're digital, and they sure as hell don't get thrown in unmarked boxes in the archive room. I rewound the tape and listened again, slower this time. Every question, every pause, it was me. Not just the sound, but the thought process. My throat felt dry. I couldn't stop imagining that woman, clutching the phone, whispering about her son while something stood in his room, smiling. And in my mind, I could hear myself answering her, like I was about to do it for real. I took the tape out. I meant to put it back in the box and lock it away. But my hand wouldn't move. Instead, I found myself staring at it, turning it over in my palm. No label, no date, no reason to exist. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the hum of the lights to feel louder. Long enough for the wall clocks ticking to sink into my head until I couldn't tell if it was coming from outside or inside my skull. The building was dead quiet until I heard something. Not in the room. Through the headset I still had around my neck. A faint crackle, like a live line. Then, my own voice. Not from the player. From now. 911. What's your emergency? It was me. Right now, but I hadn't said anything. My lips were shut. My chest was tight. Static. Then a woman's voice came through. It was the same one from the tape. I think it's in my house. I tore the headset off and dropped it on the desk. My breath came too fast. My eyes darted to the player, to the tape in my hand. The call kept going in my headset, muffled but unmistakable. My voice asking her the same questions, her giving the same answers, down to the pause before it's smiling too wide. I stood up so fast my chair fell over. My legs felt weak, like they didn't want to hold me. The headset went quiet. The only sound left was my own breathing and the tape still in my hand. I thought about smashing it, just snapping the plastic and unwinding the ribbon until it was useless. But something in me was terrified of finding out what would happen if I destroyed it. Like maybe the call wasn't on the tape, it was the tape. I shoved it back into the box and pushed the whole thing into the corner of the archive room, far enough that I'd have to get on my hands and knees to reach it. Then I locked the door and left. But that night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop hearing her voice. And his. The child saying, "Who are you talking to?" It looped in my head until I could almost picture the room she was in. The thin strip of light under the door. The sound of bare feet on carpet. At some point, I fell asleep, and I dreamed I was at my desk, wearing the headset. The call came in, the exact same one, and I answered it, knowing exactly what she was going to say, exactly how I was going to respond. Like reading from a script I didn't write. When I woke up, the phone on my nightstand was off the hook. I don't remember touching it. I told myself it was stress, fatigue, a trick of memory from hearing so many strange voices that day. But I couldn't shake the thought, what if the call wasn't in the past or even the present? What if it was waiting in the future and I was already in it? 2 nights later, it happened. I was on shift and the line lit up. I put on my headset and said, 911, what's your emergency? And she said it, word for word. I think it's in my house. I didn't need to check the log. I already knew what was going to happen next, that I didn't go home that night. I told myself it was because I was covering for another dispatcher on a night shift, but that wasn't the truth. I stayed because I couldn't stand the idea of leaving those tapes here, sitting in the dark archive room, waiting for me to come back. It sounds stupid now, like the box was some kind of animal I didn't want to turn my back on. But I kept thinking about that last tape. The one with my own voice. The one where I was describing a call I hadn't taken yet. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear it. The tremor in my own words. The sound of someone breathing on the other end of the line. And that awful, slow moment when my recorded voice went quiet, like I was staring at something I couldn't believe was real. The thing is, I didn't remember saying any of it, because I hadn't. Not yet. The dispatcher floor was quiet that night. Only 2 of us on duty. The hum of the fluorescent lights above me felt too loud, like they were pressing against my ears. My headset sat on the desk, coil cord stretching just far enough for me to lean back in my chair. I kept looking at the blinking red line on my console, the one that stayed dark unless a call came in. Every call is supposed to be unpredictable. That's the job. But that night, it didn't feel that way. I knew exactly what was coming. Around 1 a.m., I went back into the archive room. The box was still there, sitting under the low shelf where I'd left it. The tapes looked smaller now, less threatening. I even told myself I'd overreacted earlier. That maybe the tape wasn't me at all, just someone with a similar voice. I want to believe that. But my name was on it. Not written, not labeled. Spoken. I'd said my name on that recording. And not just the way you'd say it to a stranger. I'd said it like I was trying to convince myself I was still me. I don't know how long I sat in there, staring at the box. I remember running my hands along the edges of the tapes, feeling the tiny grooves in the plastic. One of them was slightly warm, like it had just been played. That's when my headset crackled. It wasn't the phone ringing, just static, faint at first, then growing sharper, like someone slowly turning a dial. I froze, hand still in the box. Then, the static cleared, and I heard a voice. My voice. "This is dispatch. What's your emergency?" My stomach dropped. It wasn't coming from the cassette player. It was coming from my live headset. I yanked it on and stared at my console. Line 3 was open. I hadn't answered it. "Hello," I said, my own voice sounding smaller than usual. There was no answer, just breathing. Long, slow breaths, too controlled to be panic. Like someone was standing perfectly still, holding the phone just inches from their mouth. Then my own voice spoke again. Only it wasn't me speaking in the moment. It was me from the tape. I'm looking at it now," my voice said. I could hear the shake, the same shake I'd heard earlier when I played the recording. "There's a man. I think it's a man standing in the corner of the room." I swear I felt my skin pull tight around my bones. I hadn't said that. I wasn't looking at anything. I was in the archive room, staring at a box. But my voice on the line was somewhere else, describing something I couldn't see. The breathing on the other end quickened, but it wasn't mine. It was heavier, wet almost, like each inhale had weight to it. Then, faintly, in the background of the call, I heard something scrape. A dragging sound, slow, across a hard floor. The same sound I'd heard when I'd first played the tape. I didn't even realize I'd stood up until my chair slammed back into the wall. My console was still flashing, line 3 still open. Hello? Who is this? I said again, louder this time. But the voice didn't answer me. It just kept talking. My voice, narrating a call that hadn't happened yet. It's moving now. I don't think it has a face. My chest tightened, and I started pulling at cords, ripping my headset free. The call dropped instantly, the red light on line 3 blinking out. I didn't even have time to breathe before it lit up again. Same line, same slow blink. I didn't want to answer it. God, I didn't. But something in me, maybe that same thing that kept me from leaving the building, made me pick up. Dispatch, I said, my voice unsteady. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, the sound of someone whispering. Too faint to make out words, but I knew the cadence. It was me, whispering to myself. The whispering stopped, replaced by the faint click of a cassette tape running to its end. Then the line went dead. By now, the other dispatcher on duty, Mark, had come over. He was older, worked here for years. He saw my face and immediately asked what was wrong. I didn't know how to explain. I just told him I thought someone was patching into the lines from outside, maybe replaying old calls to mess with us. But when I tried to show him the tape, it was gone. Not the box, that was still there. Just that one tape, the one with my voice. It wasn't in the pile anymore. Mark told me to shake it off, that maybe I'd misplaced it earlier. But the way he looked at the box, I could tell he didn't want to touch it either. I spent the next hour trying to keep busy, taking routine calls, drunk drivers, noise complaints, a dog hit by a car. Normal. Safe. But I couldn't stop glancing at the console, waiting for line 3 to light up again. It did. Only this time, the second I answered, there was no breathing, no whispering, just my own voice saying something I'd never want to hear. It's behind you. I froze. My eyes darted around the room. Mark was across the floor, talking to someone on his own line. The hallway behind me was empty. But my voice on the call kept talking. Don't turn around. I slammed the receiver down so hard it bounced off the cradle. The console went dead. And then, just as I sat there, my skin prickling, the main lights in the dispatch room flickered. Once, twice, then held steady. That's when the actual phone rang. Not a replay. Not a tape. Live. Line 3. I answered slowly, my throat tight. Dispatch. This time, the voice was different. High-pitched. Shaking. A man. There's someone in my house, he whispered. They're standing in the corner of the bedroom. I can't see their face. Every word sent a cold wave through me. It was the exact same phrasing from the tape, from my own voice earlier. Only now it was real. The call was happening. I followed protocol automatically, my training kicking in even though my mind was screaming. Sir, I need you to stay calm. Are you somewhere safe? He swallowed audibly. No, they're moving now. My pen hovered over the notepad. My eyes drifted toward the hallway door, the one that led to the archive room. It was cracked open. I forced myself to keep my focus on the caller. Can you get out of the house? No, he said quickly. They're right next to me now. There. The line filled with static. Then the dragging sound again. Slow. Heavy. Sir, are you still there? There was no answer. Just that sound. Then, faintly, under the static, I heard my own voice. Not from tonight. Not from now. From the tape. I don't think it has a face. The call cut out. I sat there, headset still pressed to my ear, staring at nothing. Mark was looking at me now, eyebrows furrowed. I didn't tell him what the caller said. I didn't tell him it matched the tape word for word. Because if I did, I'd have to admit the truth. The call I heard on that tape, the one with my voice, it wasn't a recording of the past. It was a recording of the future. And now, the future was here. I still don't know if that man lived. We sent units, but they never found anyone in the house. The front door was open when they arrived. The bedroom corner was empty. No footprints. No signs of forced entry. But the caller's phone, it was still there, lying on the floor. The line was dead. And that night, when I went back to the archive room, the box was gone.